Story 1. My wife cheated with my horrible coworker, who's made my job hell. Turns out he's married too, so I partnered with AP's wife to rip them off financially. I, 36M, found my wife, Julie, 32F, with my colleague Marcus, making out on the patio at the Christmas party. Marcus works for the same department as me. I'm yet to have any confrontation with Julie, so whatever I'm writing is as per what I have seen and circumstantial evidence. I suspect their affair started after the last Christmas party, but they had cleverly been hiding it. I was new at this workplace, and it was my first office party. Before that, Marcus and I didn't share a good bond at work, not because I was new, but because he considered me a threat. In the very first week of my joining, I was handed over some of Marcus's tasks, which I efficiently automated using my software skills. The work that Marcus took a week to do, I delivered in 3 days, which impressed everyone but Marcus. He tried different ways to find a loophole in my work, but he couldn't. He was heavily criticized by the management for not thinking something similar to me. However, this didn't help me much in the office. Marcus was a popular guy, more of an imposter and gossipmonger. People love gossip, don't they? So he was the wannabe in every office group, whereas I'm more of an introverted person who likes to keep it to myself. I go to work, fulfill my responsibilities, and head back home. I was happy with my small circle of college buddies and my wife. 2 months later, we had this annual Christmas party at work. I showed up with my wife, Julie. She's definitely a beautiful woman and a head-turner at any party. She makes sure to dress up well to show off her perfect symmetrical assets. Julie and I were enjoying and bonding with other coworkers. As the night grew, people started hitting the dance floor. Julie insisted that we dance, but I refused. Not a confident dancer, definitely not at office parties. I think Marcus would have noticed that because the next moment I saw him approaching our table and asking for my wife's hand to dance. She looked at me and I smiled. I can't say no in that situation. I thought she would turn him down, knowing the history between us, but Julie obliged and danced with him. I couldn't help but notice the grin on his face when he took her to the dance floor. When she came back, she was full of energy and laughter. Seeing my grim face, she said, "Oh, don't be mad. How could I refuse him? It would have been so rude." So I had to oblige. I realized she was right, and it was just a dance. Eventually, I forgot about it. I got busy at work and didn't ever imagine that my wife would be fooling around with the person who has been my pain in the ass for a year. This Christmas party yesterday, I showed up with my wife again. She hit the dance floor with some of my female colleagues, but soon was seen grooving with Marcus. I was like, what the hell? But I had to pretend to be cool about it. Other colleagues were quick to notice it, and they exchanged glances. Everyone is aware of the Cold War between Marcus and me. One of them, Noah, remarked, "This is why Marcus doesn't bring his wife along, so he could shake off others' wives' booty." My face was flustered by his comment. I asked him to mind his language. He apologized and said he was just being funny to make the situation lighter. Other colleagues started the debate about whether Marcus is married because he claims to be single. Few suspected he's married but has been hiding it so that he could have open chances with the juniors. Noah was certain that Marcus was married, but no one believed him fully because of his prankster image. He said his sister runs a salon, and one day he had dropped by to meet her there. He bumped into Marcus, who was accompanying his wife for a grooming session. Everyone just laughed at this, thinking he was making this up. I felt suffocated sitting there and watching Julie shake her booty with Marcus. I went to the patio to get some fresh air. A few minutes later, I heard someone's footsteps approaching towards outside. I ignored it, but as they came closer, I heard their giggles and moans, as if they were making out on their way to the patio to avoid getting bumped into. I hid in the corner at the back to escape from there once they were in. A moment later, I found a couple entering the patio with lips locked and their hands all over each other. They were none other than Marcus with my lovely wife. He held her by her waist with one hand while the other one was inside her dress. My wife was holding his face with both her hands, lost in pleasure. I wanted to beat the hell out of them right there, but instead, I pulled up my phone and recorded everything. It was dark, yet the dim light did its work in capturing the right thing. Marcus held her by her neck to push her away from his face and said, "We don't have much time before your low-life husband comes here searching for you. Let me give you a good show." She giggled and bent on all fours. All of it got recorded. My body got numb. I could feel nothing. I don't know how long it was when a janitor showed up with a garbage bin. They hurriedly covered themselves up and left, cursing the janitor who interrupted their blissful time. After the janitor left, finishing up his business, I came out of my hideout, headed straight to my car, and drove off. I crashed at my friend's place, made him listen to my sob story until morning. When I checked my phone, I found one missed call from Julie. Looked like a courtesy call to show me she was looking for me. I bet she was happy to see me disappear so she could get banged by her lover in the open. This afternoon, I came home. She was still sleeping. Understandable, must have been sore from last night's action. I went to my study to hatch my revenge. She cheating on me is hurtful, but she's sleeping with a man who has made my life miserable. Makes it even more outrageous. Right now, I'm scavenging out Marcus's wife. I'm gonna find her and send the videos of his cheating. All of Marcus's social media accounts are private. I cannot see his friend list. I don't even know her name. In fact, I don't even know she exists. If you guys have any tricks for finding out a stranger on social media, please help me out. Would appreciate any help on that front. Thanks. Update 1. One of the most common comments here was, "How did I not see this coming? Was there no sign at all?" Well, I don't know if that was truly a sign or if I had too much faith in my wife. A few months after the first Christmas party, I think it was around spring, I was scrolling through my Facebook feed when I noticed Marcus's comments on Julie's posts. I was taken aback. I asked her if she was in touch with him. She said no, he was her Facebook friend, just like thousands of others. She said Marcus had sent her the friend request after that party, and she had accepted it. That's it, no big deal. I got alert and reviewed her profile more often. I saw Marcus's generous comments with heart-on modons on each of her photos. I asked her about this, and she said it was just one of those hundreds of comments she gets on her pictures. Julie is not a social media influencer, but she's very active there, and her profile file is open. I told her that Marcus is not one of the 100 strangers who comment on her pictures. He and I are not on good terms at work. He doesn't even talk to me at work. Then why the hell is he interested in my wife's pictures? She replied sarcastically, "You should ask him." Her response infuriated me, and I yelled, "He is no one to me. I cannot question him, but you are my wife. It hurts me to see you in touch with someone whose sole motive in life is to pull me down." Marcus had pulled many tricks at work to show me under the bad light. He was even successful a couple of times. I was severely criticized by my manager. Marcus is also a bootlicker and had manipulated our manager into his camp. Julie knows everything about my office politics. Yet she let Marcus's flirtatious comments slide into her inbox. This was until July this year. Then my department bagged a new project, and for that, I had to travel twice every month to the client's office in Seattle. Work got really hectic, and I barely had time to think about anything else. Marcus and I were both on the same team and had similar job responsibilities, but somehow he was always free and loitering at the lobby, whereas I was immersed at work. It was so overwhelming, but I took it as a learning opportunity and worked my ass off. During this time, I found Julie getting emotionally distant from me. I thought it was because of my work commitments and travel schedule. I tried to make it up by taking her to fancy dinners on weekends and buying expensive gifts for her. She never complained about my travel or my absence at home. She didn't even acknowledge the growing coldness between us, and this was bothering me. I insisted my manager not send me for a work trip so frequently, or at least shuffle it between me and Marcus, but he refused. He said I was more skilled to handle the client there. I said, "Then why does he get all the Achievers Awards in every quarter while all I get is criticism?" He had no answer but gave me a false promise that he would recommend my name for the next promotion. He was a bad liar. It was evident on his face that he was not going to do that. Talking about Julie, when she woke up after her long slumber that evening, she asked me why I left her alone at the party. I said, "You needed me? I thought you were having a fun time with your new friend." She laughed and said, "Oh, don't be a jealous baby. It was just a dance. I smiled and let it slide. She thought I was angry that she was dancing with Marcus. I let her think that because I'm going to attack them without any warning. My search for Marcus's wife has yielded no result yet. I tried with Marcus's surname, but the search result was overwhelming. I'm thinking of fishing out Marcus's address from the company's database and heading out to his home. I find no other option than this. Any better suggestion than this most welcome. Update 2. As some of you mentioned, it is next to impossible to find someone without a name or handle on social media. I was almost certain to go to his house and find his wife, but then my friend reminded me about my colleague, Noah. I felt he knew about Marcus's wife and could help me out here, though he's a big-mouthed person, and I'm not very fond of him, but I needed his help. The next day, when I went to work, I casually got into a conversation with him and asked him if he knew about Marcus's wife. He smirked at me and said, "I knew you would ask about her, especially after last night's twerking. Yeah, that's how he is, an annoying piece of..." I wanted to ask him about her name but didn't have the courage to do so. Maybe he sensed that desperateness and helplessness on my face and asked, "Do you want to know her name or contact?" I immediately blurted out in excitement, "Please." He told me her name and said that he would ask his sister for her number. I searched with her name across all social media platforms and found her on Twitter. I told Noah that the number is not required as per her Twitter bio. She was working in a management position at one of the leading global organizations. I texted her saying I needed to talk to her about something very important regarding her husband. She responded with her number and asked me to call her. Her response gave me the vibe of a confident and poignant woman. I called her and introduced myself. I told her subtly that her husband and my wife are up to something, and I have the video of them together. She asked me if I could meet her after work. I said sure. When I went to meet her, I was mesmerized by her aura. She's definitely a woman of value and wit. I wonder how any man could cheat on such beauty with brains. That's right, only a fool like Marcus would. I narrated the details and showed her the video. Tears welled up on her cheeks, but she remained composed. She was shocked to know that the office party had an invitation for spouses because Marcus told her that spouses were not invited. I asked her if she had never doubted him. She said she had caught him twice sexting some random woman on social media, but it wasn't severe, so she forgave him. I told her that Marcus claims to be single and has this reputation of a boy at work and has been associated with many junior colleagues. She cursed him at the top of her voice. She had been holding herself until then. She said, "That son of a needs to be taught a lesson. Do you have any plans in mind?" I said, "No, not right now, but I'm definitely going to make them pay for all the humiliation." She said, "Let's do it together. Now we are in this together, planning our revenge. We have come up with some very amusing ways to ruin Julie and Marcus. We'll update the thread after the final nail in the coffin." Update 3. Hold your seatbelts. This is going to be wild. Julie and Marcus have been served with hot, piping revenge. AP's wife, Sandra, 33F, and I came up with the following revenge plan. We turned a blind eye to their affair, though we knew they were lying about the sleepover with friends. We let it slide. We both pretended to be so busy at our work that we didn't give an F. Julie and I co-own the house. I made an updated document where Julie has made me the sole owner of the house and made her sign that, not forcefully but tactically. She was once heading out to meet AP, lying that she was going shopping with friends. I deliberately blocked the restroom wardrobe and made her run late. When she was about to leave, I asked her to sign an insurance renewal document. It wasn't suspicious because I pay for all her insurance. She just signs it and gets done with it. Between those papers, I kept the house ownership document. She signed all of them without seeing them. Sandra emptied all the money from their joint bank account, borrowed Marcus's car, and sold it off to a rookie. The house in which Sandra lived was hers, which she secretly leased out to a new tenant and got a restraining order against Marcus on that property. I blocked all the cards on which Julie was surviving. Number 3, number 4, and number 5 were carried out towards the tale of the revenge. Just before ghosting them, Sandra bought a 5-day couple holiday trip to Florida as a birthday gift for Marcus, but a day before the trip, she lied that something had come up at work and she couldn't make it. Marcus quickly suggested that he could take this trip with his guy friend. Sandra agreed because it was a non-refundable package. During that same time, I lied to Julie that I was going on a 15-day work trip. I checked into a hotel during that period. She called me and said she was going to her school friend's wedding in Vegas. I asked her which friend she was that I didn't know of. She said they were not in touch for so long, but suddenly she called up and invited, and Julie couldn't say no. I said, sure, have fun. She was feeding me lie after lie. Marcus and Julie went on that 5-day vacation to Florida which Sandra had bought. We used their absence to execute our plans. Sandra emptied their joint account, sold his car, rented out her house, and got a restraining order against him. I blocked the cards which Julie has been using, packed up her stuff, and kept it in storage. The details would reach her through mail along with updated property papers and a restraining order after she returns. This would have been all if Marcus had left me alone at work, but he went behind me. He proudly told his work buddies that he had been with my wife because I couldn't fulfill her. He made outrageous comments hinting at me. He even showed Julie's chats to his friends where she was expressing her desires for Marcus and even mocking me for giving her only vanilla $X while Marcus gave her a thrilling time. He used to read out her chats loud to humiliate me without taking my name. I decided to use this against him and recorded that stuff. Some of the co-workers from Marcus's camp even approached me to humiliate me that Marcus had taken my wife's. I mailed all the details to the company's HR, demanding Marcus's termination on the grounds of mentally torturing me. I even threatened the management to leak all this workplace harassment on social media and other review platforms. This negative PR cost a lot to the company. HR promised me that the evidence proved that Marcus was a bully, and he would be terminated as soon as he comes back from his leave. 5-day trip. I have also sent out my resignation and asked for an immediate release. I left a letter for Julie which she would get after returning from the trip. It would be to give her the closure. It consists of more or less the same thing I have mentioned in this update with a little extra detailing. I told her the truth about Marcus, that he's not single as he has been claiming and that he has a wife. Sandra and I connected over our betrayal, and we realized that we have so much in common. She's a smart and witty woman with a flourishing career, while my loser wife is a bum. She has never done a full-time job. Her part-time job seemed to be a burden for her, and she used to be complaining about it. I'm amused to imagine her dilemma when she would have to work full-time because now she doesn't have me to provide for her, nor does her loser lover have a job. Sandra slipped off Marcus's credit card just when he was leaving for the trip. He would have found it missing after reaching Florida. The situation in Florida is going to be hilarious. Marcus has no cards, and I have blocked Julie's card. Sandra has also called up the hotel to cancel the bookings just before Marcus and Julie were about to arrive in Florida. She didn't get any refund, but who cares? We could give up anything to watch the fun these losers go through on their lust trip. Sandra and I have also decided not to divorce these losers because we don't want to waste a penny more on them. If they want to get rid of us, they can pay for it, which looks highly unlikely now. We both have updated our wills and removed them from all our assets in case any unforeseen happens to us. They shouldn't get anything by default as they are our spouses. Sandra and I are moving to Seattle to start a fresh life. I got an offer from the client company to join them directly. The raise is 2x to my last company. Sandra said she wanted to take a break from work and enjoy it for some time. She had enough savings to last for a couple of years without worrying. Our belongings are already on the way to Seattle. By the time Marcus and Julie return, we'll be away for our month-long holiday to the Caribbean, basking in the sun. It's so much fun with Sandra, a woman who matches my intellect and curiosity. I feel so lively again. We are not seeing our forever with each other. Don't want to put that burden on ourselves, but yeah, enjoying our time together until we can. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. I checked my wife's phone and discovered her plan to cheat. She was texting a coworker about coming over while I was at work. I, a 23-year-old male, have been married to my wife for just over 5 years. We have a 4-year-old daughter. For the past week or two, I've had my suspicions that my wife was talking to someone and cheating on me. Last night, After I got home when she was asleep, I checked her phone and confirmed my suspicions. She has been talking to a coworker, and the texts from the past 2 days, previous texts were deleted, ranged from both of them saying, "I love you," to making plans for him to come to my house today while I am at work. While they didn't definitively say they were going to have sex, it was strongly implied. There is some evidence of other sensual acts already having taken place. I am now sitting at a Waffle House after calling in to work to say I'm not coming in. I'm planning on trying to get proof of the visit if he does come over by watching when my alarm is arm/disarmed through the app on my phone. After my research, if it ends in divorce, if I can prove she has committed adultery, she will not be eligible for any alimony in my state. I could stop them from making love by going home and confronting her before it happens, but it could cost me a lot in the long run if our marriage does fall apart. I love her and don't want it to end, but I can't see how I can forgive her for this. Even if I confronted her now, I would always still feel the same as if she made love with him. This hurts so much. I love her more than anything, and I feel like there is a hole in my chest and lead in my stomach. I am physically hungry but can't bring myself to eat because I'm so nauseous. I can't stop shaking. I can't think straight. I feel like a part of me has been ripped out. I am terrified of what this will mean for my life and, more than that, the life of my daughter. I don't know what to do. Update 1. The guy hasn't shown up and I don't think he will. Maybe she caught on that I knew. I tried to play it like nothing was wrong this morning when I left, but damn, did it hurt. Not sure if she bought it. In their texts, they planned for him to come over at 12:40 p.m. If he doesn't show up, I think I'm going to talk to her about it tonight. The guy never showed up, so here is the current plan. I'm going to act like nothing is wrong for now. I'll go see a lawyer in the morning and talk to a PI that I'll probably be hiring. I know from the text that she planned on having him come over during the hunting trip I have planned for next weekend, so I'm going to make sure I go and that the PI knows. I think I've decided I'm done. I don't want to try to fix it. I'm going to cover my back and get out. It's not just an affair in the sense that she's having sex. She tells him she loves him, and she doesn't seem to love me anymore. I feel like she's trying to use me. She wanted a new car and for me to pay for her to go to school but wanted to be with him. Currently, she left to presumably pick up my daughter from daycare. I'm watching the time. I know how long it should take. If she takes longer, I can guess where she went. Either way, I'm going to try to make it through Christmas and my daughter's birthday next Friday without saying anything about this. Hopefully, the PI can find evidence then. Update 2. Get ready. This is a big one. So I came home and acted normal. Everything seemed normal. We joked a bit and had sex if that doesn't hurt when you're heartbroken. At dinner, sitting on the couch after dinner, she asked me to pause the TV and asks when I was going to mention it. I asked what it was, and she said she knew I saw the texts. We started the conversation. She tells me that he didn't come over, which I obviously knew, and that she told him she doesn't want to talk to him anymore. She blocked his number. Obviously, since she has done this, the original plan is off the table. I still love her. My heart is broken. I don't know if I can ever forgive her or trust her. I don't know if I can be in a relationship with her. She wants to work on us. I don't know if I'm willing to or not. She says she was talking to him because she didn't feel wanted. She didn't feel a deep emotional connection between us, and he knew all the right things to say. She said she told him she couldn't be with him and told him multiple times she was done with him. Yet here she is inviting him to our house. She said it wasn't a choice, what she felt for him. The exact story was along the lines of, he was bagging at my register one day, and I accidentally touched his hand, and it was like electricity. I know you're probably reading this and thinking it's a load of BS. Yeah, me too. How am I supposed to trust her? I can't see her side of this. Should I give her a chance? Should I try to work on things? I don't know. Do I want to? Is it worth it? I have to figure all this out. I told her I can't decide now. I have to think about it. I'm thinking about asking some coworkers, no family in town, perks of being in the military, if I can crash on their couch for a few days, get away from it all and think. Of course, I'd come back for Christmas for my daughter's sake. I don't see any point in hiring the PI now, as I genuinely don't think she'd do anything for a while. Maybe I'm wrong. Obviously, I've been before. I'm taking plenty of precautions in the meantime to make sure I know what she is doing and if anything is questionable. I'm done. Of course, I won't tell her about any of this. Update 3, my feelings and the plan. I'm going to do a little Q&A section for the most asked questions. How did she find out? I know 2 ways. She had a strong suspicion that I knew because when she woke up, there was a notification on her phone for a new screenshot, but when she clicked it, there was no file. She was 100% sure I knew once she found this post. Yep, she's seen it. She's probably reading this now. Hi, wife. We'll get more into that later. What did she say when I asked if she made love with him? She said no. I am inclined to believe her because many of the texts, including some of the last ones, he was saying how excited he was to finally see how hot her box is. That's a direct quote from him from the text, by the way. No, does this mean I believe that she didn't? No, not at all. It doesn't change how I feel. Whether she did or not, she planned on it and probably would have if I hadn't found out. It'll be a long time before we ever are intimate again. If we ever are. I will definitely have us both checked for STDs. How do I know she won't do it again? Obviously, I don't. If we try to fix things, I'll probably never be able to fully trust her again. She is going to have to prove that she will be 100% honest with me. Here's the first test to my wife. If you are reading this, text me now. Text me right now and tell me to stop reading and text me. I will know if you have read it and don't tell me. It will be over. I feel like I represented her wrongly. She was saying that she did what she did with him because she felt unwanted. But she understood that it was her fault. She knows she should have talked to me. She knows she is the one in the wrong. She says she doesn't blame me for it. I didn't push her away and make her do this. She said she couldn't control how she felt for him, which I still have a hard time believing, but she could have controlled what she did. She let him talk her into it because I think that, even if she doesn't realize it, it's what she wanted at the time. Our marriage hasn't been perfect. We've had issues communicating, especially lately. We've not had a great lovemaking life. I felt like she didn't care enough and she felt like I didn't care enough. Neither of us tried enough to work on it. Does that mean I blame myself for this? Hell no, not even a little. She did this and she knows that's how I feel. I'm not trying to make you guys like her. I just want you to understand that I don't think, and never did think, that she is a terrible person. She is a terrible wife for what she did to me, but in general is not a bad person. Now for the plan going forward. I thought long and hard last night and this morning about what I wanted. What would make me happy? I'm not going to make the decision to stay or leave based on what she wants. I'm not going to decide to stay to keep our family together. I have to make it based on what I want. I want to stay with her, but that doesn't mean I've decided to. I want us to work things out and talk to counselors and have our marriage be better than ever, but I have no idea if that will happen. After I knew she read this post, I knew that she knew about the SC law on AW and that she wouldn't be entitled to alimony if she was caught. That was my only defense. Now that she knows, I don't think she'd do anything with anyone for a long time, which means that hiring a PI now or when I go hunting next weekend would be useless. However, if she's reading this and knew I wasn't hiring one, she could think she could get away with it. I'm putting some safeguards in place to ensure that doesn't happen, or if it does, I have proof. I came up with an idea. I knew I couldn't and wouldn't trust her for a long time, if ever again, if we tried to fix things. I figured out the only thing that can even start to make me believe that maybe she actually wants to stay with me, for me, and work on our relationship and not stay with me for what I can do for her. I asked her if she would sign a postnuptial agreement. I'll have to talk to a lawyer still, but if she will agree to sign a contract that if we divorce, even at no fault, she gets nothing, no alimony, no possessions except certain outline things that are undeniably hers, her computer, her clothes, her jewelry, etc., and no child support. I would support my daughter and I wouldn't keep my daughter from her. I just like to avoid court-ordered child support and give her X amount to support my daughter based on how long she has her at any given time, rather than X amount per month. I don't know how it would work, hence why I have to talk to a lawyer and make sure I can do it like that. I have further plans, but I will not be posting them here as she may see this, and those plans involve her not knowing about them. I may reveal them later on, but it will be a long time from now. At this point, if the postnuptial agreement works how I hope and she signs it, I think I'd be willing to try to work on things. I know a lot of you aren't going to like this. Maybe she is lying to me, Maybe she really is just a piece of crap. But I knew her before she did this. I knew her before our marriage degraded. I don't think she did it because she wanted to make love with someone else. I don't think she did it because she doesn't love me. I think she did it because he was telling her the exact same things I used to when we were first together. I think she misses what we used to be, and while we will never be what we used to be, this will go one of three ways. Either we try to work on things, it doesn't work out, and we get a divorce. We try to work on things, she continues to cheat, and we get a divorce. Or we try to work on things, we fix problems we have had with ourselves and our marriage since we first got together, and our marriage and relationship will be stronger than it has ever been. I'm hoping for the latter. She has terrible self-image issues. She thinks the worst of herself. She's also super introverted and doesn't get to know many people. This is the first job she's had where she's been around other people in years. Of course, this doesn't excuse anything, but I felt like it was relevant. Update 4. Currently sitting at the bar drinking some Jack and Coke. So we talked. We tried to work things out, and it seemed like it was getting better. Then she said that she wasn't sure how she felt or if she wanted to try. We talked some more, and she said she did want to try. We had a session of counseling with a therapist Wednesday. The counseling went more or less like this. She said she felt like she wasn't getting enough out of the marriage and that I didn't care or talk to her. The therapist asked her some questions, and she answered basically saying she could tell I did care and did talk to her or try to anyway. The therapist kind of explained to her that it wasn't that I didn't care, by her own admission, and instead that she just wasn't happy with it and didn't know what she wanted. Well, she decided what she wanted last night. She started setting up an air mattress in the extra room, and I saw she had some new sheets that she had ordered to fit it. I looked at her phone to see when she had ordered them, and she was texting him again. So obviously we're done. We will be getting a divorce. I know a lot of you are going to say I told you so, but I was 100% aware this was a possibility when I tried to work things out, and I don't regret it at all. I will look back on this in the future and know I did everything I could to fix things. I have nothing left to regret, and that makes me happy. I tried, and I can never blame myself. Now before anyone says it, please refrain from calling her names or just generally talking crap about my wife, as you can't just stop loving someone. Will I still love her? Telling me how crappy a person she is doesn't help. I don't forgive her, and I may never, but I don't resent her. I still want the best for her and our daughter and want her to be happy. I genuinely believe she regrets hurting me, but at least believes that can't help how she feels. We are done, but she is currently planning to move back to Florida with her family, which means leaving this guy too. She doesn't think she can be happy with me anymore, but I don't really think she's leaving me to be with him. In my opinion, she is excited about the pursuit, the puppy dog love that you get when you meet someone new. I think she is damaged and needs help to figure out herself and her self-deprecation issues. She will be staying here in our house for the time being and seeing a therapist, hopefully while she still gets the benefit of it being married to me by SC law. We will have to live apart for a year before we can file for the divorce, but she will be leaving relatively soon. We have agreed to do mediation instead of having lawyers involved to save us money in fighting. We still get along well enough. She has agreed that she will not pursue alimony, and I think she will be giving me full custody of our daughter if the courts accept it, but with her still getting as much visitation as possible. I won't try to F her over as much as you guys will tell me to, and although I love you all for all the support and everything you have done for me, you don't know me and you don't know her. She's not a terrible person. I truly believe she is telling me the truth and won't try to F me over either. It's going to be rough for a long time, but we'll make it through this. The most important thing to me right now is making sure our daughter is taken care of and that we do what is best for her. I'm on drink number 4 now, so I'm done for now. Update 5. It's been 4 years since I discovered that my ex-wife was cheating on me. I have no interest in rereading my original post and reliving that time in my life, so I'll give you a summary of what happened and where I'm at now. After the day or two of activity that the last post took place in, my ex, we'll call her Sheila, and I spoke. She made promises to stop talking to the other guy, but of course, couldn't keep her promises. Within a month or two after trying and failing counseling, Sheila moved out. She stayed with her lover, and they remained together to this day. I retained custody of our daughter and life went on. I went through a deep depression, and I'm honestly surprised that I came out the other side of it. I have you all, my daughter, and my mother to thank for that. Sheila went on to get pregnant with the other guy's kid, get an abortion, get pregnant again, have the second kid, and have that child taken by CPS for 6 odd months for suspected abuse. We actually get along better now than we have since I discovered she was cheating. Not to say we're friends, but I've moved on and have stopped holding resentment for what she did to me. I believe in karma and feel like she's gotten hers. She hasn't had an easy life the past 4 years. I haven't stopped resenting her for being a bad mother, but I've accepted that I can't fix it. Instead, I'm focused on being the best father I can for my daughter. She just turned 8 and is the most amazing child anyone could ask for. I've actually just come out of a 2-year relationship that didn't end badly. We're just going our separate ways. For the first time in my life, I'm happy and excited for my life as a single man. My life isn't perfect, but it's as good as it's ever been. Thank you so much to everyone that helped me through the hardest part of my life. I'll never forget you. To anyone going through a difficult time, it gets better. Make it to the other side. It's worth it, I promise. Love you all. Now on to the next story. Story 3. My wife's affair with her professor. By exposing their texts and videos during her big presentation, they both got kicked out. I, 29M, and my wife, 27F, have been married for about 2 years. We met on a typical date, one that involved drinks and good conversation. I learned she was a dentist and had recently graduated. She pushed her way through dental school and has been successful thus far. I was a contractor for a business and didn't make anywhere near as much money as I heard her making. Still, I wanted to support her, and her love of classical music also brought us together. I took her to see the orchestra, and because of this, the two of us fell in love. After a few months, we moved in together. We both lived in an apartment and eventually, over the next year, realized we felt strongly for one another. With our combined income, we ended up getting a townhouse. I started getting better gigs and working on my business as well, and I fronted most of the mortgage despite her having a successful dental practice. Eventually, a year later after we moved into the townhouse, I popped the question. I asked if she would marry me at a classical music concert on the anniversary of our dating day. She said yes, and in a few weeks we rushed the ceremony and were married. Things were great. I provided for her, getting her luxury items when I could. She gave back as well, despite insisting that I didn't need to, but I loved her and I wanted to give her the world. Then things changed. My wife was told that her education was too archaic to qualify for her position. She needed to get continuing education or come back and get a higher education. When she told me this, I was a little hesitant. That's one income that we'll have to rely on. She insisted that the practice would be okay. She wanted to run it still but would have a more hands-off approach rather than hands-on. After some back and forth where I told her that she could just do it part-time or something, we came to an agreement. She would go back to school and I would provide for both of us. It wasn't a huge issue. However, it did mean that both of us would have to live a bit more modestly. She enrolled in school and went full-time. She told me that she'd be done within the year, and then once she was done, she wouldn't need another continuing education for another 5 years. She could do it throughout the years on her own time. I agreed with this, thinking it would be easy. I mean, it's not like I wasn't making money, right? But then it happened. We had some financial troubles. It began with losing a couple of major contracting jobs. I figured I could bounce back and get it together. Then I discovered an employee was embezzling the company funds, thousands, in fact. We had to pay for a lawyer to provide litigation for that, and I also had to shell out money just to win the case. It was hell to say the least. I had to do this all on my own because my wife wasn't helping with it. That's when I started noticing the changes. Instead of being open and inviting, my wife grew distant, almost cold and uninviting. And whenever I asked her how school was going, she would act distant. Something was up. I noticed she spent her nights at school later. She told me it was because she was trying to get help from her professor, but something seemed up. When I asked her what she needed help with, she wouldn't directly respond. She said it had something to do with dental techniques and nothing more. I brushed it off initially. After all, she might just be stressed. However, other aspects of our relationship deteriorated. The most apparent was the sex. We had it less and less. She shied away, telling me she was too tired, even on the weekends when she was freer. She'd hold herself up in her office to work on homework. Eventually, I grew frustrated. Why was my wife pushing me away and kicking me out? I grew curious. I told my buddy about it, and he told me that she might be cheating. That's preposterous. Cheating? Why would she cheat on me? Then it occurred to me, maybe that's why she got distant. My friend said the only way to prove it would be to look at texts and recordings, so I did. One night, while she was in the shower, she left her phone out. I thought that it was bait, but when I opened it, I saw some texts. They were all for someone called Professor B, and there was a heart next to it. She sent this person flirty messages, even saying that she wouldn't come home late and planned to spend time with him. I had to figure out who Professor B was. I scoured through the school records, finding Professor Burns, one of the lead professors for the dental division. Suddenly, it all made sense. My wife is distant, and of course, she has her own personal disdain for all forms of intimacy. It upset me, but I knew what I had to do. I quickly formulated a plan. My wife had a presentation for her dental academy project. I went to her computer and changed it out. A smile formed on my face when I did it. My wife mentioned her presentation. I asked if anyone could come see it. She said yes, and then I told her I'd come see her. She grew nervous, saying I didn't have to. However, I insisted. So on the day of the presentation, I walked in, sitting right in the front row. I watched as it was her turn. My wife popped in the PowerPoint, and the smile she had turned into a look of horror. It was all the messages of her cheating, revealing to everyone here that she was seeing Professor Burns. I even found a couple of videos on her phone, two which I showcased. When my wife asked what this was, I asked her back. I told her that I knew she was cheating and that I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I called her a cheater and that I didn't want anything to do with her. She finally broke down, saying that Professor Burns was a good man and that he made her happy. I told her that was no excuse and that I was disgusted with her. Professor Burns was outed, and the faculty immediately fired him. They told him never to come back or teach at the university. I don't know if he ever found another job or if his past haunted him. As for my wife, her being outed as a cheater was embarrassing. But the dean took it upon himself to kick both of them out. My wife was blacklisted from other universities too, as it was found she plagiarized a couple of papers. She lost her job and wasn't able to go back to dental school. I kicked her out of the house too. While I fronted the mortgage and it was hard, I don't regret it. She's a cheater and I don't take it kindly. She did it because he made good money since he had some big papers. Still, it sucks learning about this, but it is what it is. Now on to the next story. Story 4. My mother-in-law tried to ruin my birthday, so I got the perfect revenge at her party. Let me tell you about my MIL, the queen of disapproval. From day one, she made it pretty darn clear that she wasn't a fan of me or our marriage. Every time she stepped into our house, it was like she had a radar for finding faults in every single thing. It's like she had a secret mission to nitpick her way through our lives. Take this one time, for instance. She told me she wanted a specific type of tea and couldn't stand anything else. I thought I'd be the perfect host and got her that exact tea. But oh no, that wasn't going to cut it for Her Majesty. As soon as she took a whiff, she acted like I served her some kind of toxic sludge and tossed it away, claiming she'd never say she liked something like that. But believe me, that was just the tip of the iceberg. This woman had a talent for being snobby in the most creative ways. She dropped snarky comments about my cooking, my choice of clothes, and even the way I decorated our home. It was like she had a personal vendetta against me. You'd think my husband would put his foot down and stand up for me, right? Well, he did try and failed. He'd always try to smooth things over, explaining to her that she needed to respect our choices and accept me as part of the family, but she just wouldn't budge. It was like she wanted to be the gatekeeper of the family and decided that I didn't cut it. I mean, who does that? We were supposed to be a family, but she acted like I was some kind of intruder. So I couldn't believe my ears when I found out that my MAL, of all people, had planned a surprise birthday for me. It was such a weird twist in the tale, considering how she had never been a fan of me. I had mixed feelings, wondering if this was some kind of elaborate prank, or if she was genuinely trying to make amends. Little did I know that this birthday surprise would turn out to be anything but pleasant. The day started with all the regular birthday cheer. Balloons, decorations, and smiles all around. I tried my best to put aside my reservations and enjoy the moment, but then came the truth. As they brought out the cake, I was excited to see what it looked like, but imagine my shock when I saw my husband's ex's name spelled out in big bold letters instead of mine. I mean, seriously, how could this be happening? I glanced at my ML, trying to comprehend what was going on. She had this smirk on her face like she was hiding something, and then she casually mentioned that she misspelled my name because she was getting old and forgetful. Yeah, right. It was clear as day that she did it on purpose. I mean, who misspells their own DIL's name and writes the name of the ex on her birthday cake? It was like a cruel joke, and I couldn't believe she had stooped this low. Everyone else seemed to be in shock too, not knowing how to react. I tried my best to keep my composure, but deep down I was hurt and angry. It was hard not to take it personally, especially after all the snide remarks and disapproval I had endured from her. When my husband saw the birthday cake, he was just as shocked as I was. He had genuinely wanted to surprise me with a special birthday celebration, but his mom swooped in, offering to plan the entire surprise herself. It seemed like a hopeful sign that she was finally willing to try and build a better relationship with me. She told my husband that he wanted her to have a good relationship with me, and she was willing to make an effort. It was like she was playing the role of a caring and understanding mother-in-law, luring him into believing that she had turned a new leaf. Little did he know that it was all a facade, a cunning plan to ruin my birthday and hurt me in the process. I didn't want to ruin the party, so I just smiled. I had other things in the plan. Now let me give you some backstory. It seemed like my MIL had a knack for stirring up trouble with her habit of comparing me with my husband's ex. It was ironic because my husband had told me that she never approved of his ex either. Talk about déjà vu. But what was even more amusing was the fact that my MIL herself had been the second wife of my FIL. It was like she conveniently forgot her history while busy meddling in ours. The irony was too real. The story of my FIL was a mystery in itself. My husband didn't know much about his other family, and I had never been given much detail either. All we knew was that my FIL had two families, and it seemed like his other family wanted nothing to do with us. We had heard whispers of a distant and complicated relationship with them, but the details were shrouded in secrecy. It was like there was a hidden divide that we were never meant to cross. And then I found out, after a year of marriage, the reason behind my FIL's divorce from his first wife was none other than my MIL. It was like something out of a soap opera, with family secrets and drama at every turn. I couldn't help but wonder if my MIL's constant comparisons were a way of asserting herself and trying to fill the shoes of my husband's first wife. It was like she was trying to erase the past and make herself the standard for what a wife should be. But no matter how much she tried, she couldn't erase the fact that my husband's first marriage had nothing to do with me. We were our own couple with our own unique love story. Coming back to the present, like I said, I didn't react. I just smiled at her mistake. Now, my MIL's birthday was legit the next day, so I decided to return the surprise. I decided to play a little prank and wrote my FIL's first wife's name instead of MIL's on the birthday cake. Of course, I acted all innocent, blaming the bakery for the mix-up. Oh, the look on her face when she saw the cake. It was priceless. She was fuming with anger, and I couldn't help but suppress a smirk. It was like karma had come full circle. All those times she had belittled me and made me feel unworthy, and now she was the one feeling the burn. She started yelling and throwing a tantrum, but I remained calm and composed. My husband tried to calm her down, but she wouldn't listen to reason. In a way, it felt liberating to see her lose control for once. I innocently asked if she was okay, pretending to be clueless about the whole thing. Inside, I was laughing with glee, but then she stormed out, unable to handle the humiliation. My husband looked puzzled, asking if I had done it intentionally. I didn't want to admit the truth, so I played it off as an honest mistake. "Oh, I must have picked up the wrong cake," I said with a perfectly innocent smile. He bought it hook, line, and sinker. It was my little secret, my moment of giving her back what she deserves. I knew I probably shouldn't have stooped to her level, but I couldn't resist giving her a taste of her own medicine. And boy, Did it feel good? Do you think I went too far, bringing up old wounds and all? Update 1. Well, my little birthday cake prank seems to have stirred up quite the storm. My MIL is complaining left and right, insisting that I did it intentionally. But you know what they say, what goes around comes around. I denied it, of course, and played it off like I was innocent as a lamb. I reminded her of the time when she messed up on my birthday with the tea incident, and I didn't react the way she did. I mean, come on, it was just a cake, right? No need to blow it out of proportion. But you know how it is with MILs, always looking for a reason to be dramatic. She loves the spotlight, and this was her moment to shine. The whole family knows how she can be, so it's no surprise that they're all on my side. They've seen her dramatic antics before, and they're not falling for it this time. It's honestly quite funny how the tables have turned. She's used to being the center of attention and getting her way, but this time she's the one left red-faced and fuming, and I have to admit I'm kind of enjoying the show. My husband seems a little torn, caught between defending his mom and believing me, but hey, I'm not going to spill the beans about my little prank. Let him think what he wants. It's all in good fun, right? Update 2. Ever since the little cake prank, my ML has been surprisingly silent and hasn't been bothering us much. It's like a breath of fresh air, and life has become so much more peaceful. Maybe, just maybe, my little prank had a more significant impact on her than I thought. Perhaps she realized that her dramatic antics weren't getting her anywhere and decided to dial it down a notch. Or maybe she's just sulking in a corner, nursing her wounded pride. Either way, I'm not complaining. I can finally breathe without the constant scrutiny and criticism. It's like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders, and I feel freer than ever before. Of course, I'm not naive enough to think that this newfound peace will last forever. Knowing my MIL, she might bounce back with her drama in no time, but for now, I'm going to just enjoy it. Update 3. You know what they say, if you can't beat M, block M. And that's exactly what I did. Life has become so much better ever since I decided to block my MIL. No more nagging and drama, just sweet, blissful silence. And thanks to all of you for supporting me in the comments. It feels good to know that I'm not alone in dealing with a dramatic MIL. Your words of encouragement have been a source of strength for me. When she confronted me about blocking her, I just played it cool and blamed it on network issues. Hey, a little white lie never hurt anyone, right? Besides, it's kind of fun to mess with her a little bit. I have to admit I'm enjoying this newfound power and control. Blocking her has given me a sense of freedom and peace that I never knew was possible. It's like I have the remote control to her drama, and I get to decide when to turn it on or off. To all those dealing with their dramatic MILs, stay strong and don't let anyone bring you down. Until next time, take care and live your best life. Bye for now. Now on to the next story. Story 5. Stepdad gave me a clock for my 18th birthday. Then I found a hidden camera inside it and ran away, thinking he was responsible for it. But it turns out his new assistant bought it to spy on me. I 18F, live with my mom and my stepdad, Joshua. My mom married Josh 6 months ago, after a horrible divorce with my dad. I'm not getting into the details, but my dad had an affair with someone and got caught in the act. It was awful. It was messy, and I am not in contact with him anymore, and neither is my mom. So now about Joshua. Josh has been friends with my mom for as long as I can remember. I never knew he had a thing with my mom, and I don't think anything happened before the divorce. I grew up calling him Uncle Josh and hanging around his practice. He's a dentist, so it was kind of weird getting used to him being like a dad to me. But I have always liked him, and he makes my mom really happy, so why not? I guess the reason I'm telling you guys about all this is because I want to make it clear that I am familiar with Josh, and I have been around him a lot. Anyway, coming back to what's actually happening right now. So yesterday was my birthday. I usually don't make much of a fuss about my birthday. I went to school and after that went out with my friends. It was nice. I didn't expect anything more when I came back home, though. I realized my mom and Josh had this whole surprise party planned for me. I had no clue, which is surprising because usually my mom is terrible with secrets. So I walked in, and my mom, Josh, my Aunt Kathy, and my little cousins were there to surprise me. It was actually kind of nice. We did the whole happy birthday thing, and there was a cake and everyone seemed happy, so everything was good. My mom made all my favorite food, and dinner was delicious. Then it was time for presents, which is where things went very, very wrong. I started with the presents from my cousins and Aunt Kathy. Then it was time for my mom and Josh, and they got me concert tickets for one of my favorite bands. I was over the moon. I worked part-time at a diner and had been saving up for ages to afford a ticket, so as far as I was concerned, this was the best birthday gift ever. My aunt and cousins left a bit after that, and I went to my room to tell my best friend about the tickets. I was already in bed and talking to her when there was a knock at my door. It was Josh, and he said that there was one more present for me. At that point, I was convinced that nothing could ever top the concert tickets, so I was really excited to see what else was there. Josh went into their bedroom and came out with this huge box. I couldn't wait and absolutely tore into the wrapping to see what was inside. At first, I was confused. It was a clock, a wall clock to be more specific. It was pink. Pink is my favorite color, and had these little strawberry decals on it. It was really cute but kind of underwhelming after the tickets. I was still grateful for it, though, and kept it on my study table. Josh asked me if I liked it, and I said yes, and he seemed really happy and said the concert tickets were my mom's idea, and he wanted to get me something on his own without any help from my mom. My room is all pink, and I have a lot of strawberry-themed things, so the clock was kind of perfect. I thought it was pretty sweet and thanked him again for caring so much for me. He wished me a happy birthday once more and left. I was getting pretty sleepy, so I told Amy that I was going to crash and that I would see her tomorrow. She was on call and heard Josh come in and asked me what he got. I told her it was a clock, and she asked me to show it. I told her I'll do it the next morning, but she was stubborn as usual and wouldn't listen, so I agreed and told her I'd take a picture of it and send it to her, but I would not be getting out of bed, so she would have to make do with an awful dark picture with my flash on. So my study table is right next to my bed. When I'm lying down, I can stretch my arm just enough to reach it. Feeling super lazy, I just decided to stretch and take the stupid picture from bed. That's when I noticed something suspicious. Really, really suspicious. So my room was really dark. I didn't have any night lights or fairy lights in my room because I needed complete darkness to fall asleep. I took my phone, opened the camera, turned on my flash, and pointed it to the clock. That's when I saw it. A little bluish light on the clock. The time flashed in a baby pink, but there was a distinct blue light. I thought it was weird but didn't think much of it. I took the picture, sent it to Amy, and tried to just sleep. I almost fell asleep when I remembered something I saw in some movie or TV show forever ago, and immediately sat straight up. I looked at the clock again. I looked up some stuff on Google and tried to take a picture of it again, but this time with my front camera. Guess what? The same blue light. That confirmed it. There was a hidden camera in that clock. If you didn't know, you can detect hidden cameras with the front cameras of most phones and sometimes even the back camera. I don't exactly know where I learned this, but I am a huge nerd for crime documentaries, so maybe some show or other. I was sure that there was a camera in that clock, though, and it was recording me. I felt a pit in my stomach. I didn't know what was happening. Why would Josh get me something like that? Someone might have been watching me right at that very moment. That thought put me out of the shock I was in. I got up and threw the clock in the trash. When I came back to bed, I was shaking. I was confused. I didn't know what was happening. All of it was just crazy to me. I didn't know what to do, so I called Amy and woke her up. I told her what happened, and she was just as freaked out as I was. We were on call for a while, and she said that I should call the cops because clearly Josh was some sort of pervert, and who knows where else he had put secret cameras. The thought of that made my stomach turn. I thought of immediately going to my mom and Josh and telling them what happened, but I was so confused and scared at that moment. It almost felt like a bad dream. Amy and I went on the internet trying to find this particular clock on some shady site. We had to do some digging, and sure enough, we found it. That site was full of creepy spying objects and stuff like that. The worst part? I also saw stuffed animals there, which made me feel even more paranoid because I have a lot of stuffed animals, and some were bought by my mom and Josh over the years, and who knew where he might have found them. I felt like everything in my room was just watching me. It was probably one of the worst things I've ever been through. I didn't know what else to do, so I just took all the stuffed animals that I didn't buy myself and the clock, put them in a trash bag, and dumped it all. At that point, I felt physically sick and decided to just go to sleep for the night and deal with this in the morning. I took some melatonin, put on some white noise, and tried to sleep. I don't know when I fell asleep, but I must not have gotten a lot of it. My mom woke me up screaming my name. I was disoriented and couldn't register what she was saying for a minute. After a while, I understood that she was screaming about the stupid wall clock. She said that Josh found it while taking out the trash that morning, and he was extremely hurt by what I did. I took a deep breath and told her that if she could just give me a second, I would explain everything and would be glad I threw that thing in the trash. She called me an ungrateful brat and said that I wasn't worth any effort they took to make my birthday special and told me to immediately go and apologize to Joshua. Before I tell you what happened, keep in mind that it was very early in the morning, at least for me a little before 7 o'clock. I obviously had a rough night and didn't sleep much anyway, and my mom being so agitated put me in a bad mood as well. So when she told me to apologize to Josh, I told her that he's lucky I wasn't turning him into the police for being the massive pedo creep that he was. My mom lost it at that and slapped me. I was shocked. In 18 years, she has never raised her hand at me, and the first time she did it was because of a man. I was offended, but more than that, I was really hurt. The full-fledged reality of what was happening sunk in, and I started to cry. My mom thought that I was crying because of the slap, but well, that was only partially true. I was just overwhelmed with everything, and I needed her support at that point, but she just made things worse for me. She saw me crying and said that there was no point in tears and I should have thought before throwing away a gift that was given to me so thoughtfully and not acting like a brat. This was my last straw. I got really angry at her and screamed that she should think twice before defending her husband. She got even angrier at that and asked me to be careful about what I said next. I had enough at that point. I got down from bed, grabbed my phone and car keys, and asked her if she knew where Josh got the clock from. She literally thought that I was trying to say it was a cheap gift, which is why I threw it away, and started saying something again. I told her I had enough and not to waste her energy. She was standing right in front of me, and I pushed her aside, ran to my car, and drove away. She followed me to the driveway and tried to stop me, but luckily I was quick enough to get away. I drove to a diner nearby and sat there for a while trying to think of my next move. I knew I couldn't go home. I called Amy, and she told me to just go over to her place, so that's where I've been since the afternoon. We decided to confront my mom and tell her the truth, so we shared screenshots of that creepy site which had the clock I got. I sent it to her and waited. In about an hour, I started getting calls and texts from both her and Josh. I didn't want to talk to either of them, so I didn't pick up any calls, but the texts were all apologies. Both of them said that they were ashamed of how they acted and should have given me a chance to talk instead of lashing out at me. They said that they could explain if I gave them a chance, but honestly, I don't care. I don't see how this can be explained or made okay, and I definitely don't want to go back home. So I texted her saying that she should stop trying to reach me because I'm not interested in hearing her out. She texted back a long paragraph saying that Josh was innocent and would never do anything like that. Apparently, the wall clock was bought by his assistant, Peter. Josh did want to get me something for my birthday without Mom's help, but clearly couldn't care enough to pick something out himself. So he asked Peter. Peter is this new guy who has been working for Josh for the last few months or so. Josh hired him fresh out of college, so he is not much older than me. Since Josh's practice is pretty nearby, he sometimes sends Peter around to run errands like getting his lunch, and he has even come to dinner, so I've met him a few times. He has always seemed kind of creepy to me, so it isn't exactly the biggest surprise that he would try to do something like this. I mean, he has never even tried to talk to me directly, and I have no reason to believe that he was capable of doing something like that. My mom's text said that they wanted to call the cops on Peter but wouldn't do it without my permission. If that wasn't enough, she would leave Josh because he put me in this spot with his carelessness. That kind of shocked me because I know my mom really loves Josh, so it must have been hard for her to say that. This finally made me call her. My mom sounded devastated. She had no idea about the camera and felt incredibly guilty for not believing me earlier. She kept sobbing and apologized a million times. She said she was sorry for everything, especially for slapping me and not listening to me when I needed her the most. She said that she just wanted me to come back home and apologize to me in person. She said that she wanted to make things right between us. I told her that I still wasn't ready to see her but asked her if she was sure that it was Peter and not Josh who bought the clock. She said she trusts Josh. I told her that I was still not comfortable living in the same house as him, and she said that I was more important to her and that if I wanted to, she would get separated from Josh. I told her that I needed time to think. Also, I got like a million missed calls from Josh, but I didn't pick up any of them. He has texted me many times saying he can prove that it was Peter who bought the clock and he had no idea that it had any sort of camera. He also said that my mom wasn't speaking to him and begged me to hear him out. He said he loved my mom and loved me as a daughter and would never even think of doing something to hurt either of us. So that's what my day has been like. Amy has been my rock, and she said I can stay with her for as long as I need. It's just her and her grandma at their house, and I know her grandma very well. I'm sure she won't have a problem with me crashing till I figure out what my next move is. My mom has even tried to reach Amy, but she didn't pick up. I guess it's not hard to figure out where I would go in a situation like this. I just hope she doesn't actually show up at her door. I feel really guilty and conflicted. I feel like maybe I should hear him out and see if he actually has proof, but at the same time, I am scared and feel unsafe at the thought of seeing him. I don't want to destroy my mom's marriage over a misunderstanding, though, so I'm wondering if I'm doing something wrong here. Amy says that I am right and should only do what feels right to me, but I am not sure at all. Update 1. I did not expect to become Reddit famous overnight. While you guys really blew up this post, I have gotten a ton of questions and comments, and honestly, I haven't even had the chance to go through half of them. I do have some major updates, so I think I'll put those up here first and then get to answering you guys. So the morning after I wrote my post, my mom and Josh actually showed up at Amy's place. Honestly, I wasn't even surprised. I told my mom that I didn't want to see Josh yet and it would be better if they just left, but she begged me to hear her out. She was really emotional, and I could see that she had been crying. Even Josh looked pretty rough, so I kind of felt bad for them and decided to just hear them out. Once I'll clear things up first. Josh was not lying about Peter picking out the gift. He showed me texts between the two of them, and although he said that he had told Peter to find a gift directly, so there was no text about that, I did see texts from Peter saying, "Found the perfect item," and a picture of the clock. It was just an IM and not a link to the website or even a screenshot. It looked like an ordinary clock, just the way it did to me when I first got it. Josh said that he liked it and told him to order it at the office address and send him the invoice. It really was a basic conversation and nothing suspicious. I started thinking of all the times I have interacted with Peter. It was nothing that stood out a lot. Honestly, he has just been a little creepy. I caught him looking at me. I thought it was harmless and sort of funny and never thought twice about it. I told Mom and Josh about this, and they were furious. Josh kept apologizing to me over and over again, saying he failed me and put me in danger and that he would never forgive himself. Of course, at that point, I knew that none of this was his fault, and I was not angry at him at all. I agreed to go back home with them. I can't believe I almost destroyed their marriage over this. It's also gross to think that some random creep was trying to spy on me. Wondering if the camera was on when I got the clock and he already saw me for a bit gives me the chills. It's just awful. All of this is a nightmare. I've been talking to Mom and Josh, and we all agree that we should go to the police about this. We have enough proof to make sure Josh doesn't get caught up in the middle of the investigation, and he has said that he's willing to go through anything to get me justice. We're going to the police tomorrow morning. The clock is still in the trash. We don't want to take it out because it might still be working, and we don't want to alert Peter in case he is still watching. I'm nervous about the whole thing, but at least I have support. I just hope that they catch him and teach him a lesson. I'll try to drop an update. Also, a lot of you said that I shouldn't trust Josh because there's a chance he was in it with Peter and that he's just trying to put all the blame on the guy now that they've gotten caught. I do see where you guys are coming from, but honestly, I trust him. Peter definitely has been a creep for as long as I have known him. Also, even if Josh was capable of doing something so disgusting, why would he go to Peter of all people? He is just some guy who has been working with him for a few months. I have already told you guys about the texts. I saw them directly on Josh's phone, and I even checked the time between each text. It doesn't look like any texts in between were deleted, and Josh showed me that he had transferred money to Peter's account for the clock. He had no way of knowing where the clock was actually bought from. All of this makes me feel like I can trust him. Also, I would rather give Josh the benefit of the doubt instead of Peter. Obviously, sure, he probably should have been more careful, and ideally, he should be the one picking out a gift for his stepdaughter and not make his assistant do it. But that does not make him a criminal, and it's not like Peter would heroically take the fall for Josh when we call the cops, because there is definitely enough proof to get him in trouble. I don't think it is true or even possible, but if Josh was involved in any way with all this, I am sure the investigation will reveal the truth. So that's that. Also, some of you have asked how Peter could have known that I would like a clock like that. Well, apart from the fact that Josh said that he literally told Peter to look for something that is pink and preferably has strawberries, it really isn't a huge guess for anyone to make. I love pink. I am almost always dressed in all pink. I have a million strawberry-themed things. It is just who I am. It's a part of my personality. I think instead of that, we should focus on the fact that these products even exist. A lot of you have been asking me to name the site that he got the clock from. I don't want to do that because I don't want any trouble, but I am sure you guys can find it if you search for hidden cam clocks online. It didn't take Amy and me much time to find it that night. Update 2. We called the cops on Peter and he got arrested. Thank you to everyone who offered advice and support on my previous post. After reading through all your comments and talking it over with my mom and Josh, I decided that I couldn't let this go without taking action. I was still feeling shaken and scared, but I knew I needed to do something to protect myself and possibly others. I had a long conversation with Amy too, and I realized that there was a chance he might be doing this to other girls, maybe even minors, and that made me really determined to stop him. After having breakfast and gathering my thoughts, I decided to call the police. My mom and Josh stayed with me the whole time because I definitely needed some emotional support. I explained everything to the dispatcher. The hidden camera, the suspicious clock, and my confrontation with my mom. They took it very seriously and sent 2 officers to our house to take my statement. The officer was very understanding and professional. I was kind of scared and suspicious about how it will go, but he just asked me to describe the clock in detail and any other items I thought might be suspicious. He asked me about any interactions I had with Peter, and I told him about as much as I could remember, even though there wasn't much to say. I also told him about the website Amy and I found which sold similar spy devices. He assured me that they would investigate everything thoroughly. We also shared the text between Josh and Peter, showing that Josh had asked Peter to pick out the gift. The officer also said that he needed Josh to go with him for questioning. Josh agreed immediately and said that he would do everything needed to cooperate with the investigation. My mom got kind of nervous about him going to the police station, but he told us both that there was no need to worry and that he would be back before I knew it. After taking my statement, the officer asked if I felt safe staying at home and if I had any friends or family members I could stay with. I told him I was all right and that I trusted my mom and Joshua. He told me to contact them if I felt unsafe. He also mentioned that they would need to search my mom and Josh's house to look for other possible hidden cameras or suspicious items. The police conducted a thorough search of our house. They checked things around my room in particular for quite some time but did not find anything except the clock and the other stuffed animals I threw away. Peter said that none of the other items were bought by Peter or anyone else. My mom agreed and said that almost all the items I threw away were actually bought by her. They did still go through them but didn't find anything suspicious. They didn't find anything else in our house in any other room. My mom was visibly relieved when the police confirmed that there were no other objects of concern. Josh left with the cops and came back after a few hours. I asked him what happened, but he said that it was all standard, and they asked him if he wanted a lawyer, but he said no. They said that he might be called in again. The cops also said that they wanted my mom to go over to the precinct for some standard questioning tomorrow, and they said that they needed me to come in too for paperwork and other stuff. Peter was arrested at his home and is now under investigation for invasion of privacy and other related crimes. I don't know much about what is happening right now, but I just hope that he confesses or they get enough evidence to convict him and prove that Josh wasn't involved in any of this. It has been an exhausting day, and I just want all of this to be over soon. My mom and Josh have been very nice and are giving me space to deal with everything. We have also gotten a lawyer who I will be meeting tomorrow. I will try to put in an update, but I don't think it will be anytime soon. I will wait for things to reach a definite point and also take time to process all of this. Update 3. It has been 4 months since my last update. I've been really busy, so I apologize for how long this took. First things first, Peter was found guilty, and we pressed charges against him. He actually did not put up a fight at all and admitted to buying the camera clock without Josh's knowledge to spy on me. The only silver lining in all this is that we found no evidence of him doing anything similar in the past. Because I was a minor when Peter first started working for Joshua, he didn't bother to delete his search history. So the police found the site with the surveillance devices on his computer. And on a more disturbing note, they also found that he actually follows me on almost all of my social media using fake IDs. I obviously had no idea about this, and it really creeped me out. He admitted that he had a crush on me when he first saw me, which is extremely creepy because he is an adult, and again, I was only 17 when he came around. The police didn't find any evidence of him doing anything except following me on my socials while I was still a minor. Though, he said that he knew he couldn't approach me directly, so when Josh asked him to pick out a present, he came up with this disgusting plan. I don't even want to think about what would have happened if I had not noticed that camera that night. Since he had no prior convictions or criminal charges against him, this was considered a misdemeanor instead of a felony, even though we tried to charge him with a felony. He spent a few days in jail but was bailed out. I am quite disappointed with how things turned out in this aspect, but whatever he did is permanently on his record, and that is all I can say to myself. I think that is everything that has happened over the last few months. I am currently focusing on school and getting into college. I am also going to therapy to deal with the trauma of what happened. I am glad I have my mom, Amy, and Josh to support me through all this. Now on to the next story. Story 6. I did everything for my family. I worked 2 hard jobs, hired a nanny, and helped my wife to be a stay-at-home mom. But she said I ruined her life, so I am now thinking of leaving. I, 43M, try to do my best to provide for my wife, 38F, and 2 kids, 3, 5, as well as my mill. I would like to think I'm doing a decent job. Over the years, I worked to improve our family's living situation. Not only did I complete another bachelor's and recently a master's in a STEM-related degree, I, at the same time, worked 2 full-time jobs while completing my second bachelor's and put my wife through school as well. She completed a degree where she could make good money, 60-70K/year, in a healthcare field that always has jobs available. But with the birth of our 2 kids, she has since given up on her career to be a stay-at-home mom. For the time being, at first it was a struggle while I was finishing up my master's. Once I completed it, after our youngest turned 3, my career took a jump up, and we are now able to afford our single-income household in a more feasible manner. We're far from rich but do okay for a single-income family of 4, a little north of 150K base plus bonuses the past year. Life was overwhelming for my wife, so even though I now work 75% from home, I budgeted to hire a daytime nanny to help her around the house with 1 child while the other is in school. Now my day starts every day around 5:36 a.m. I get the house ready for the day before the nanny comes at 8 a.m. I get our oldest up and ready for school, breakfast made, and plan out my day. I bring our oldest to drop off and be home in time to let the nanny in. My most recent task at work has me grounded for the next 2 months, meaning I am now 100% WFH. While this is nice, I am busy in meetings all day as my role manages teams on a global scale, as I oversee projects for my industry. For the past 1.5 months, I realized my wife, as much as she says her life is stressful at home, starts at 10 a.m. I asked my mill and nanny if this was always the case after a week or so of WFH, and they both responded more or less, sometimes earlier, sometimes later. My wife literally wakes up, cooks, and then scrolls through her phone or shops from home, which brings me to my gripe. I am glad I am able to provide her that sort of life, since we both grew up lacking in means. I get the possibility of postpartum depression, the stress of having kids, the feeling of being unfulfilled, the fact that I probably am a shitty husband. But for what it's worth, everything is taken care of and then some. I manage the house's finances. She claimed she was too busy to do so. Pay all the household bills, I pay my own personal bills. I pay her bills, track and perform all the upkeep of our house, appliances, cars, pets, etc. And I also help pay for my mill's medical bills and car note. But apparently, my life is on easy street compared to hers. I can't de-stress to her because it seems like she always feels the need to one-up me. I had a bad day, but she had it worse because I'm lucky I got to go away and work. My feet hurt from walking all day during work travel, which is nothing compared to her standing and cooking with a child clinging to her. For the past 2 or so years, I've been told I ruined her life, her opportunities, etc. But when I reminded her of what she says, she denies and dodges accountability. My mill has brought me aside and stated she's noticed a change in both myself and my wife. I have a greater attachment to my kids. Hell, I've hugged the dog and talked to them more about my life than to my wife. I honestly feel like I am in emotional survival mode, as I'm one step from moving up the career ladder and one step away from finding love and comfort from the bottom of a whiskey bottle. I'm sure I'll be hearing from the manly men of Reddit about how I'm being a simp, but I'm not a machine. I just want to know and feel that someone I prioritize, aside from my kids, appreciates and loves me for what I do. I'm sure I'll hear from the stay-at-home moms of Reddit, which is fine. I grew up in a single-parent household. It's not easy. And honestly, with the help of her mother and a nanny Monday to Friday for one toddler while another child is at school, can you honestly tell me she's having the typical stay-at-home mom experience? Because neither my friends nor colleagues who are single parents can say she is. I'm sure the masses of holier-than-thou Redditors will consider this a poorly written fanfic, but it is what it is. Thank you for the replies. To add more context. 1. I never cheated. I do work in an industry that has a large female population, but I'm literally an open book with work, name, colleagues, and staff under me. She has access to my work agendas and correspondence if she really wanted to snoop. But on that note, she still doesn't know what exactly I do for a living at this time. 2. We, as a whole family, her parents and mine, have tried to get her to go to therapy, but she refuses or skirts around the issue. 3. Aside from my coming from a single-mother household, my biological dad was present in my life. She has had both parents in a reportedly monogamous marriage for over 40 years. 4. I have tried to talk to her about everything and my own feelings, but again, one-upmanship tends to be the trend here. 5. What I am getting out of the marriage was asked. Now, aside from my 2 beautiful kids, I've been asking myself that same question. We have a near non-existent sex life, mainly since last year. I always figured maybe it's part of depression or whatever she may be going through. Maybe I'm just not attractive enough or just horrible in bed because of my health conditions. I'm not some supermodel husband, but temptation and opportunity do knock, and I can perform still, but I never give in because, as cliché as it sounds, I honestly do love my wife and want to only be with her. 6. I'll give credit where credit is due, as I don't want to sound biased when I say she wakes up and cooks. She cooks for everyone in the house, myself, kids, Mill, and even the nanny. Aside from breakfast, she cooks all meals and snacks. I typically fast until lunchtime, and our oldest tends to eat a small, simple breakfast in case they don't like what school serves that morning. She does load both the kids and her laundry, but seldomly folds and puts them up. I typically do my own, and the rest of my clothes I dry clean because they're work clothes. She does keep track of our pantry and fridge, but after she makes the list, I'm the one who goes out and buys everything if not delivered. She does clean our bathrooms and house 50% of the time. The other 50% is done by either Mill or myself, or sometimes the nanny if she feels like being extra helpful. 7. Prior to the nanny, my Mill was the main help for my wife up until she had unexpected medical needs, so I opted to hire a nanny to help them both, more so when Mill is having treatments and recovering. Update 1, May 6, 2024. Not sure if anyone would read this, but thank you for those who have reached out and chatted. While I know I've kept my newfound friends here updated, I figured I'd just update my post and keep it short. I showed my wife my post the following weekend, and she read it and all the comments. Long story short, argument. She left our house to stay with her sister, and I've been a single parent since. The sad to say, aside from the good nights to our kids, it's all pretty much the same routine. Nothing much else to say other than thank you for all the kind words of encouragement. Just need to add this post got bigger than I expected from a venting post, but I've responded to a few comments nonetheless. Thank you for the comments and DMs, and more so for the offers to let me ruin your life. Ha. It's been the highlight of my day/night as I sit here drinking with my dog while everyone else is asleep. It feels depressingly sad that I feel that I have to turn to random internet strangers for some sort of validation in my rant. My apologies in advance as I try to keep this as vague as possible. I ruined my wife's life again. June 3, 2024. I just wanted to update those who have been kind enough to check up via DM and comments. Apologies in advance for the lengthy post. It's a bit of irony and coincidence that I made a follow-up from the update on May 6, 2024 I made on my original post during Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, but I could really use another outside of my therapist. My apologies if this isn't the storybook ending/destroying of a relationship people were hoping for. To save you a read. Wife left, came back like nothing happened. She made it about her. Nothing's changed. I'm continuing to be suffering mentally, knowing nothing will change while trying to keep it together for our kids. Lots of takeout. The day after she packed up and left, my wife attempted to come back and take the kids with her to her sister's. Naturally, I was against this, and thankfully so was her whole family, including said sister. Not only was it not fair to our kids for her to sweep them away into a home that's not theirs, but to put that financial and housing stress on the rest of her family since she doesn't work and her sister and her family, husband and 3 kids, stays with their dad in the house they grew up in. After a little over a week of being away, I guess she cooled off, so she just decided that it would be fine if she walked in the door with her bags as if she just came back from Target. She came into my office while I was working and angrily stared at me while I sat on a conference call meeting with my team, and I couldn't just jump off as this is a busy time of the quarter for us. I guess that didn't sit well with her because once I took off my headset and closed my laptop, she started yelling at me about how much I really don't care about her and her well-being overall. At that moment, I couldn't do anything more than look at her and just shake my head. My mother-in-law came in after hearing my wife yelling and pulled her away, telling her to not bother me while our nanny kept our youngest away from it all on the other side of the house. That night, after the kids were put to bed, I sat in my office by myself with a drink, as I've been doing for the past nights, and my wife came in. We talked, we argued, we cried, we drank. One thing led to another and we were in bed. I wish I could say that was our making up, but the next sobering morning as we laid there, she went on about how hard it was for her the time she was gone. Literally, it was about her struggle staying at her family house in her old room with her dad and sister's family. How lucky I am to be able to stay here and do this and that and buy this or do that and not stress as much as they did. How easy my and everyone else's in our family lives are compared to hers, even though we had similar upbringings. My mind and heart broke that morning. I've been spiraling down since then, and this last week I made another attempt to reconcile and talk things out, but I was met with a shouting match. While trying to express my current stress and anxieties with life and work in general. Wife. Well, do you know how hard this is all for me? You're supposed to help me be happy. So when it comes to my happiness, stress, needs, and overall well-being, go to hell, get over it, right? Wife. We all have our own problems. You need to figure it out and get over them. I don't know who the woman I am at home with is, but that wasn't the woman I married and vowed to spend my life with and raise our kids together. Since that conversation, I've been noticeably distant with her. I've been sleeping in my office or on the couch or with my kids in their bed after putting either one of them to sleep. Still doesn't change her starting her day at 10 a.m. and sitting on her phone, talking to her mom groups between cooking meals with the kids in both mother-in-law and nanny's care. Nothing has changed, and I doubt that anything will change. Sadly, I think even if we got a divorce, nothing would change or feel different anyway. Since during my wife's leaving, the day seemed like any other day except with a little more takeout than usual. My main fear there isn't that I wouldn't just lose my wife. I'd lose my kids in the process. So I guess it's sad to say the grand finale to my story is, with like a lot of men and some women I've talked to here, I'll just continue to smile and suffer in silence. First off, thank you for all the comments and DMs. Some context and clarification since, admittedly, my post was emotionally charged since I typed it up after another argument. Post-birth, our kids' pediatrician's office gave my wife those postpartum depression screening forms, and during the time of both, she scored pretty high and was suggested to see a therapist. With our second child, she scored significantly higher and I should say I, made an effort to get her the help she needs. She refused, so entered mother-in-law and nanny for support. I know what people will say/think, But this is one of the reasons I am not 100% ready to just give up and file our life together away. Also, I know silently suffering in the near and long run of our kids' future will not add to a healthy atmosphere, but neither would a bitter and hate-filled divorce. I know some have compared it to ripping off a bandage, saying it'll hurt at first, but that pain goes away. But I'd rather try to spare my kids thinking that their parents ended up hating each other because of them or something along those lines. I've told a few people I talked to in DM since my last post a little more insight on my personal life. Prior to my promotion, I was a PM managing teams and budget, so out of habit, I planned for a lot of what-ifs. That being said, I made a number of contingency plans. Sadly, things went south. So yes, I have talked to a lawyer, 3 actually, to know our rights and what each of us are entitled to, have a draft settlement created, and on hold until I feel I need to use it. I know what I want and am willing to offer more than what is fair for our kids' well-being, but also have a plan if we end up going to court. It's 100% on me that I'm suffering in silence, but I'm too stubborn to just give up. So while I'm venting, I don't expect anyone to feel sorry for me. I endure it to keep the norm our kids know, ensure my Mills treatments go uninterrupted, and, of course, the hope my wife would finally be open to give therapy a shot and climb together to a better place. Thank you all again. New update. I ruined my wife's life, so I ruined everyone else's too. July 1st, 2024. I'm done. Wife said I don't do enough and I'm not in front of the therapist and family. Father's Day dinner, she got served. She's mad. She is trying to act perfect, and I'm just waiting while taking care of my family, kids, my mom, and Mill. Oh well, I'll just ruin everyone else's life too and my family, secondly. To clear some confusion, I did not get 2 bachelor's and a master's while working 2 jobs at the same time, as some readers are assuming. Bachelor's number 1 graduated in the early 2000s. Bachelor's number 2 via online, 2 classes a semester. Later while working 2 full-time jobs. Job number 1, hospital, 36 to 48 scheduled hours. Job number 2, big box store, 32 to 40 hours spread out 7 days a week. To pay for both my and my wife's tuition because she decided to go back to school before we had kids. After graduating from bachelor's number 2 and entering the industry I am in now, I was able to work 1 job and get my master's. So no, I did not get 3 degrees at the same time or in that close succession, and I am surprised that I actually have to spell this out, as someone working 2 jobs while going to school isn't that uncommon, or at least that's what I thought. My wife chooses not to work. She does technically have a job. She just barely works it to the point we forget she has a job, as in she worked 1 day 4 to 5 months ago for 8 hours on a Tuesday. Kind of barely works her job. Manager is really supportive, flex PRN model, and gives her a list of days they need coverage, and she can choose to pick up a shift or not. While she can work more and only does just enough to keep up her license, she complains to our family of her career being on hold for one reason or the other, although she has the opportunity to work more if she opted to. All things considered, she has an available, supportive circle around her for either decision. She falls on our family, her job, and I have made multiple offers and taken many steps to open that door for her to go back to work, i.e. nanny. Mill moved in to help. I work from home, her crazy flex PRN schedule, etc., etc. But here we are. I am and have been in therapy for myself already. Aside from what I deal with at home, my work can be very debilitating in regard to my mental health as well as physical at times. Since I can't find the support I need mentally and physically at home with my wife, I've opted to attend therapy rather than find comfort with someone outside of the home or at the bottom of a bottle. I've tried to express this to my wife, and as mentioned in my previous post, she has a habit of one-upping me, and here we are. My in-laws are still married, given the circumstances and our home. My Mill moved in to help out my wife while my SAL and her family moved back into their parents' house due to their own reasons. SIL and her family can save money while getting back on their feet, and my wife and I benefit from Mill's help, and we can keep a closer eye on her while she undergoes oncology treatments. My wife, by means of questionnaires, is highly suspected to have PPD alongside a history of symptomatic OCD, ADHD, amongst other ailments that over the years she refused to get evaluated for or refused to accept results given. I knew what I was getting into, and I loved and accepted my wife for these flaws as she did mine at the time. Spare me, or I don't feel sorry for you or pity. I am like every other man who fell in love and wanted to give my person the best of me and the world I can offer, But again, here we are. There's a lot of manly men, Red Pill Nation guys out there complaining and saying I'm simping over my wife. While I respect your own opinions and perspectives, I will outright say if this situation was only affecting my life, I would have left a long time ago. As one Redditor said in a past comment that stuck with me, I am the kind of person that will take a bullet for his kids. Maybe it's in a different context intended, but to protect my children from any harm, physically or mentally, I'll take the proverbial bullet if and as needed. I'd like to think other dads out there would respond to the duty to protect their children, and that's why I endured as much as I have for the time being. I would rather my wife use me as an outlet for whatever her problems were versus our kids. Thank you all for the comments and reaching out. I've met many strangers who have become great Reddit pen pals and some who have been in the know of every step that has been progressing to this point. I am surprised at how far this has gone from other subreddits, other platforms, and even YouTube. Love me, hate me, say it's all fake. No matter where you stand, thank you for all the constructive comments and DMs to check in. Our kids and myself are going to be all right moving forward. Now for the update. The end of an era. This will be shorter than some expected, as really there's not much to say but just satiate the questions some of you may have had and give people the satisfaction of the "I told you so" moment on Reddit. After a hard push from our family via an intervention, my wife and I finally attempted to go to marriage counseling. I'm sure many of you can guess how well that went. Blame, tears, regret, threats, gaslighting with a side of, I am the reason for her life being ruined and horrible, again, just this time in front of a licensed therapist instead of Redditor mom groups. In the end, everything the therapist suggested and noted went over her head and ignored as it was against the grain of her status quo. One thing I guess worth saying was the therapist asked if she could recall when she last truly felt happy. Her response was about 12 or so years ago. Please note, 12 years ago, she was still in her 20s, childless, living with her ex. A vastly different time and position in life. I know it's petty of me, but I guess if that's when she was last happy, it wouldn't be that far of a stretch for her to find that happiness again since her ex is in the same apartment, job, and place in life that he was 12 years ago. Which is fine if that's how you want to live life. I try not to judge, but in my 40s with kids, going clubbing 3 to 4 days a week is not my jam anymore. And of course, I don't want my kids around a mom and company who drowns themselves in White Claws. To add, I know some will ask. I know and can confirm she hasn't physically cheated on me, but can't confirm if she did emotionally, if that's the right term. After said therapy session, I checked all her phone records and didn't see anything out of the ordinary, but I also didn't bother to check apps like IG or Snapchat. I know I'm probably boring, but shout out to all the Costco dads whose Sunday fun day includes making rounds with kids for samples. The following weekend was Father's Day, and this year is expected not that big of a celebration as it is for many dads out there. Our family got together to celebrate with a barbecue and just simple family time, and my wife treated it like any other day. Sleep in, get up, cook, phone, shop, attempt to play with kids, phone during said family barbecue. My wife said she felt ill, so she sat around most of the day while the rest of the family as a whole made the experience enjoyable. When everything was set up and the family all sat at the table, her parents and sister's family, my mother, our kids. Admittedly, it was a great spread. Nothing extravagant, but just a great meal for everyone. I was conversing with my brother-in-law about both of our kids' school, Father's Day activities, and I assumed my wife overheard when I mentioned that it was a little sad to see some kids sit alone without their fathers during the breakfast with dad event I attended. She blurted out, with a laugh loud enough for the whole room to hear, "It's not like you do anything anyway." I could have gone instead. At that moment, I was red and at a loss for words, sitting there processing what she said in my head, while the dining room went dead silent. My mill broke the awkwardness and, in response, said, "Well, maybe if you feel that way, one of you should divorce the other." My wife looked at my mill confused that she would respond with that and laughed mockingly in my direction and, with her hand pointing at me, said, as if another woman would want a man like him, "Just look at you." While the room sat silent, I was angry, heartbroken, confused, and embarrassed all at the same time. In manly man fashion, I just nodded my head in silence, stood up, picked up my keys, and got in my truck and drove off to get a drink while trying to ignore the cries of the rest of the family and our kids telling me to stay. I don't know what was said or done while I was out of the house the rest of Sunday because I couldn't bring myself to check our house cameras. But when I returned early Monday morning, the house had a completely different feel. As usual, I woke up around 6 o'clock, got the house and our oldest ready for school drop-off, checked emails, checked messages. Nothing out of the ordinary. As I was getting dressed to leave, my wife laid in our bed snoring lightly. All I could do was look at her and think of what we had and now lost. I've decided I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I texted my lawyer the morning to move forward with serving her. Fast forward to last week. She was served at our home, reminder to people. I had no choice but to be there because I work from home. She had, I guess what you could call a mini meltdown and came into my office screaming, "How could I do this to her?" Her mother intervened, and that was met with me supposedly turning her whole family against her. But I digress. I probably would have felt bad if it wasn't immediately followed by the rest of her weak acting, as if she's been this active and attentive wife and mother the past few years. Sure, people can say she's making an attempt, but she's made many attempts, and historically we fall back to where we've been. For those curious, I am aiming for full or at least majority custody of our kids. I already ready and will continue to cover all the expenses for our kids. Insurance, tuition, both of our kids will be attending private schools come fall, medical bills, etc. My mill has given me the courage and strength that helps supplement my own mother's support throughout this. Basically, she is what I hope the kind of mother/wife my wife would have been to our kids and me. Out of respect for my mill as well as for my own mother's shared wishes, I will continue to help oversee and contribute financial help if needed during her treatments. While some may feel I should cut their whole family off, I know the hardships pushed onto a family while dealing with cancer and have dealt with it firsthand as a family member and care provider on both sides of the desk. All in all, I'm prepared to go to war if needed, but I just want a clean divorce. My wife has no alimony coming. So sorry for the Redditors and Mommy Gang Facebook groups saying she needs to divorce me first and get that sweet, sweet alimony money. 1. We live in a state that does not typically enforce alimony. 2. She has a means of gainful employment immediately. 3. To help curb any possible problems, I will cover her insurance and bills until either divorce is finalized or when she gains full employment. So that's that. I'm done and waiting for the steps to be taken for everything to be finalized. Sorry it wasn't as exciting of a story with plot twists as some may have hoped for, but that's life. Not sure I'll update this once it's all finalized, which probably won't be for a few more months depending if we go to war or not. Now on to the next story. Story 7. Finally, I got the closure I needed after a 10.5-year relationship, but I wish I didn't. I met a girl in college while working at a specific office supply store chain back in 2011. It started as an innocent crush between the two of us, then eventually evolved into a bit of fooling around, both on and off work premises. I knew I liked her, and that she liked me, and the chemistry was through the roof between us. I also had my reservations because she was known as the easiest in the whole job and had sexual encounters with 3 of my coworkers. She came on to me strong, and I knew she was easy and just wanted a chance with her, but then it developed into more. I had been fairly inexperienced sexually at the time, and she was opening up a whole new world to me and was honestly the first girl to ever be that sexually interested in me. I felt like a king because, for the first time in my life, I had a girl who didn't just have feelings for me. She wanted to jump my bones all the time and would often stroke my ego about how amazing I was in bed and the best lover she's ever had. On top of that, we were best friends, had everything in common, and had a bond that neither of us had ever experienced before. It was an incredible start. This went on for a while until I finally made things official with her. We continued to fool around inside and outside of work, and things were great until the newness started to slow down at about the 6-month mark of our relationship. I noticed her sexual energy was kind of off. The dirty talk stopped, the enthusiasm subsided, and while her feelings for me were clearly getting stronger, we were saying "I love you" by then the sexual chemistry died down a bit. I chalked it up to the fact that couples grow out of the honeymoon phase and start to settle into a sustainable routine. I was in decent shape at the time, treating her well and doing what would be considered necessary as the foundation of good sex and chemistry. We still had sex when we could, but it just wasn't as magical as it had once been due to her declining interest. At the time, we weren't living together, and she would often promise me that if we lived together, things would be different. This is where I began to start chasing the dragon, so to speak. I eventually brought up the issue again to her when I noticed things still weren't improving and told her it was important to me and something I felt I needed to not only feel connected with her on a deeper level but also, as a man, it feels good to know you are wanted and needed by your partner, both physically and emotionally. She said it was nothing and essentially she hadn't noticed a change. She told me things were fine and that she was just growing up. She considered her previous sexual energy as immature and that she isn't the type anymore to be all over a dude like that. We still continued to have sex once per week, sometimes more, but it was never quite the same. Occasionally, she would revive some of that old enthusiasm on vacations or times where she was particularly horny. In addition to our declining sex life, I started to notice little red flags which were ultimately ignored in the long run, like her not being super generous, not being thoughtful as a partner. She had a habit of taking but not giving and had no interest in doing anything to strengthen our relationship. She became complacent, lazy, combative, disrespectful, secretive, and generally took me for granted. Our first big blowout was over something I saw in her phone under the Whisper app. The Whisper app is essentially a place where you can make anonymous statements out into the ether with no consequences since there is no identifying information. One thing she posted was, "I want my professor so badly." Someone replied to her message and DM'd and said, "Just do it." She responded with, "Him trying LOL. I confronted her about this and almost broke up with her over it, but stupidly decided to forgive her." This started a long trend of finding incriminating evidence in her phone. I should note that she had a rough childhood and had been diagnosed with depression and anxiety. I always took this into consideration but couldn't excuse bad decision-making and overall being a bad girlfriend just because of the diagnosis, especially since I went above and beyond to give her all the love, support, and literally anything else she needed in hopes of her maybe feeling inspired to reciprocate in her own way. I tried everything. Spending more money, more dates, massages, foot rubs, home-cooked meals every night, words of affirmation, vacations, sex toys, BDSM. Something she mentioned wanting to try, and to no avail. She just wasn't digging any of it. Despite all of this, my career was progressing well, my salary was getting bigger, I started to get serious about the future, marriage, kids, etc., and decided at around 5 years together to move in. It started out okay and, for a moment, felt like we were getting into a groove and that our sex lives were improving. She was more helpful around the house. She eventually stopped complimenting me, only had sex with me if I asked, usually once a week or when she noticed I was being kind of irritable. We became very stagnant, and I was internally miserable knowing that she essentially brought nothing to the table financially. I was the breadwinner and paying for mostly everything. It didn't work to improve our home life and she could care less if I was being satisfied. Despite having all her needs met and having an incredible support system, I kept trying to do my best and one-upping myself on self-improvement journeys, tried to communicate more, and kept giving. She would say she's trying, but it was always in a way that was the least amount of effort and bare minimum and would complain that nothing was ever good enough for me. Forgetting to do anything for my birthday, no sex on Valentine's Day, despite giving her the works, coming home to her being off of work all week in a dirty house while the first thing she asks me is what's for dinner. I was becoming exhausted with her and felt like a parent, not a partner. I ignored everything as usual and kept chugging along, thinking my life is this way because I'm not good enough. I need to improve in every way so she can finally see that I'm deserving of love and affection and that I'm worth putting effort into. My self-esteem was nothing at this point, and I eventually decided that the only way to fix this and finally get the girl I fell in love with back was to marry her. Insert facepalm here. I was still holding on to the sporadic moments of affection, the hope of better days, and the fact that if she was everything I needed before, improving myself and her life can bring her back. In 2019, we finally tied the knot and had a beautiful destination wedding in Jamaica, where I told everyone who knew us that she's the one and we will be together forever. This is where our relationship started to take a turn for even worse. Because our relationship spanned over 10 years, it's hard to put it all here. I will follow up with a part 2 and explain how the cheating started and how everything eventually led to a nasty divorce. Sorry for the wall of text. Finally got the closure I needed after a 10.5-year relationship, but I wish I didn't. Part 2. So, After our massive destination wedding and tens of thousands of dollars spent on an elaborate display of love, things didn't immediately decline. They actually improved a little. We spent the next few months in what felt like a mini honeymoon phase as we enjoyed the new title and presenting ourselves to our friends and loved ones as the couple that made it. It felt like we had a fresh start, and while things weren't perfect, I saw her starting to try a little more. She was slightly more affectionate, a little more enthusiastic during sex, helping around the house and with bills, a lot more. She eventually decided she wanted to go back to school so that she can make more money and contribute more, and I agreed to take care of the bills while she used the money from her part-time job to pay for her school. It was at this point that the micro-cheating started to pick back up. The micro-cheating, 2014, before marriage, she posted a comment on an anonymous app explaining how badly she wanted her professor and confessed on a dating app that she was actively trying to do so. I forgave her. 2015, before marriage, a video was sent to a female ex-girlfriend of hers via email of her masturbating. She claimed to have not sent it and that it was a 6-year-old video, despite having been sent the month prior. 2016, before marriage, I joked around with her one day and said via text, "I know what you did. Don't try and lie about it either." I knew she watched one of our Netflix shows without me. She then confessed and said she didn't mean anything by it and nothing happened between them. I was obviously shocked and didn't expect any of that to come out. She was hanging out with and flirting with an old friend from high school who clearly had feelings for her. We'll call him Jacob. She claimed nothing happened. I forgave her. 2017, before marriage, I saw a message between her and her group chat friends at work saying how her favorite sexual position is riding. In our personal life, she would tell me she hated riding, and we rarely ever did it in the 10 years we spent together. 2018, I started noticing that she was a lot more sexually active behind closed doors than she was with me, except for on the occasional vacation, and even vacations were hit or miss. She started buying sex toys. I noticed she was regularly watching porn and masturbating more often the moment I would leave the house. I have no issue with this. However, as you can imagine, I was hoping that somehow that would translate to something in our bedroom, and it never did. Despite my best efforts to create a safe space for us to enjoy sex together, for her, sex with me was a chore, a labor of love, something to pacify me and keep me manipulated. If she wanted her needs met, she would rather handle it herself, even when I offered to be a student, learn her body more, and learn how to please her in the way she needed. She continued to decline my offers and stood her ground, saying, "What you do already is fine. I'm good. I don't need all of that." 2019, 4 months before the wedding, I noticed her starting to become friendly with coworkers at her new job. This wasn't a problem, but they were a group of immature party girls that were dealing with a lot of situationships, according to her stories of them. I would often drop her off and pick her up from work to make things easier for her, so I eventually got to learn a lot about her coworkers. However, there was a particular gentleman at her job that seemed to have a lot of attention from the ladies at work. We will call him Jason. Jason was a good-looking guy on the shorter side, but very fit, muscles and all, and many ladies at the job were willing to be a side chick to him since he had a girlfriend. One day, I came across a message to her friend at work explaining to her how hot she thought he was, how she's obsessed with his abs, and she thinks that Jason is going to get her in trouble with her fiancé. One day, I confronted her and took the brunt of the blame for invading her privacy. However, the one time every few months that I would snoop through her phone, there was always something incriminating there. I never enjoyed looking through her phone because I knew I would always find something. We moved past that incident and still got married. In 2020, things started to decline as her mental health started to take a hit from the stressors she had in life. School, work, me, and my constant requests for improvement and for us to work together to make our lives better. The first thing that got me considering the idea of leaving was our first wedding anniversary. She didn't bother getting me a gift, despite me getting a homemade gift for her and treating her to a day full of activities and a nice dinner that night. She apparently decided that my gift was going to be sex, and she laid on the bed and, with the most begrudging voice ever, said, "Come on, let's hurry up and get it over with." I declined. The next day, when I confronted her about the lack of gift and her negative approach towards initiating sex, she got defensive and said, "I forgot. Okay? I just didn't think about it, and in regards to the sex, nothing is ever good enough for you." Everything I do is wrong somehow. She began being a little more complacent, and while she was like a best friend to me, she lacked a lot of the characteristics that would make us feel like more than roommates. Friends with occasional benefits at best. We always got along when it came to things unrelated to our relationship, but I always felt like I was getting bare minimum from her and constantly starving for love, affection, and sex. She used this to her advantage often and would attempt to use sex as an apology or get-out-of-jail-free card whenever I brought up an issue to her. Things chugged along and we continued going through the motions. We went on vacations, activities, adventures, dinners, you name it, and it was still always just a watered-down version of the person I truly knew her to be. She was my best friend, but I started having trouble seeing a happy future with her. 2021, after marriage, I broke down one day after coming home randomly with my brother, catching her masturbating to a picture of Jason after we hadn't had sex in almost a month. I told her it made me feel unwanted and it hurt to feel like I'm being deprived because you are focusing your sexual energy on him by yourself. She denied it, said it's not like that, and that she still needs me and what I have to offer, and attempted to be the best version of herself for me for about a week in order to bring me back in. I fell for it. Not too long after this, her mental health took a turn for the worst, and she admitted herself into the psych ward. I came and visited her every day after work for 3.5 weeks straight, sat with her in the mandatory therapy sessions, and even brought her favorite foods and snacks when she didn't like the lunch offered that day. I believed if she can overcome her depression and get the correct treatment and therapy that she would be a better person for me, and our relationship would improve as a result. It did not. 2022, after marriage, this is when everything officially went to hell. I noticed that she was spending a lot more time out with friends, partying, and having fun. There was also a trend of being really casually dressed when we went out, but being dressed to impress when she went out with her coworkers. She also developed a new habit of posting overly sexual memes and text posts that were vague but still clearly had nothing to do with me, based on our current sex life. I would question her about it when she would reference things she loves in the bedroom in these story posts, and I would ask, "Is that something you enjoy? I can do that for you if you like," and she would just kind of dismiss it, feeling as if I was trying to control what she does on her social media. Not too long after this, I'm cleaning under our bed, and I find a massive dildo, and I mean massive. I told her it made me uncomfortable that she was using it based on our lack of sex life, and she claimed that she has never used it before. I moved on, but as you can imagine, it left me with a very weird, insecure feeling that just never sat right with me. At this point in my life, my career was going well. I had side hustles and passive income streams set up, and it started to become a little more consumed with work. However, I always set aside entire days and weekends for us to spend together doing something she loved, and I would always spoil her and try to take care of her emotional needs the best I can. I got really into NFTs at the time, and during a week-long NFT convention, I spent a lot of time out that week networking and meeting people from the space. I'm not usually that guy. I'm usually home doing something nerdy and really only went out with my wife and my boys occasionally. However, that week I was out late almost every day and let her know ahead of time that this was going to be the case and it would only be temporary, even going as far as to invite her to all the events I was able to get her into. One morning, I was out late for the Bored Ape Yacht Party and was communicating with her the entire time, giving her my timeline and when I planned to arrive home. I found it odd that she was up until 2 a.m. still texting back when she usually went to sleep early. I went home that night, found her still up, and didn't think much about it. We both eventually fell asleep. The next morning, I noticed she isn't in bed. She sometimes gets up before me, and I get woken up by the sounds of her Apple Watch buzzing frantically with text messages. I look over and see it's from a group message with her coworker and a number saved as Tim Bumble. I opened up the text from her and discovered they were speaking with a gentleman named Tim from the dating app Bumble, who looked like a supermodel, and sent them multiple pictures proving just how well endowed he was. Both my wife and her coworker were clearly interested in him, as I was hit with a long string of messages between the three of them planning a threesome for the following weekend. In addition to that, nudes were contributed to the group texts by each party member, and there was even a side conversation between my wife and him outside of the group chat where she expressed her personal interest in his member and the things she wanted to do to him. I officially lost my mind, and things didn't just go downhill from here. They went off a cliff. Edit. Part 3, since it was removed. So, After finding a mountain of incriminating evidence against her, I gathered my thoughts and proceeded to confront her with, "Who the hell is Tim?" She told me that it was her co-worker's friend and that she was putting on an act with him in order to help her co-worker out. Apparently, her co-worker really liked the guy, met him on Bumble, and one of my wife's helps was seducing him into a threesome. The plan was to set up the threesome. My wife would bail at the last minute, and Tim and the co-worker would be together alone to complete the deed. This was the most idiotic thing I had ever heard. Obviously, I was frustrated by the betrayal of her being completely inappropriate behind my back, but it was also the fact that she displayed a type of energy towards the stranger in those messages that I had been trying to receive from her for years. She claimed she was incapable, claimed her sex drive wasn't what it used to be, and that dirty talk made her feel uncomfortable. But here she was contradicting herself in every single way possible. We cooled off for a bit, and I went to a friend's house for 2 days to clear my head and figure out the next steps. We were a week away from going on a 7-day cruise we had planned prior, and I was trying to figure out what to do about it. She obviously apologized profusely and admitted it was dumb to ruin her marriage over helping a friend, a stranger. She started the process of trying to temporarily be the world's best wife for the next week, sending me lunch through Uber Eats with love messages, helping out around the house, trying to be sweet and affectionate, and offering me sexual favors. One particular night, we had really great, mind-blowingly emotional sex that reminded me of our earlier sex life, and it made me feel like this was the push she needed to get back into that headspace with me again. If this is what she will be like moving forward, then I could possibly move past things and start rebuilding trust again, so I forgave her and tried to move forward, even deciding to take her on the cruise with me. The cruise went all right for the first few days as I tried to keep my mind off things and enjoy the new effort she was putting in and the person she was trying to be for me, but it kept eating me up inside. Eventually, about 4 days in, I cracked and looked through her phone again to see if there was any evidence I was missing out on. To be honest, I didn't really find much other than a conversation with said coworker vaguely commenting on the issues of our relationship based on conversations they must have had prior. Apparently, she felt that there were issues and problems in the relationship leading to this that she felt comfortable telling her friends and coworkers but never to me, even when we set time aside for weekly communication sessions. We argued about it, and she broke down crying and stayed in the cabin for the rest of the day, frustrated that I will never get over this and nothing she does will ever be enough to fix it. The rest of the cruise was quiet and awkward as we tried to make the best of the situation, but the vibe just wasn't quite the same. When we got back, we started to discuss couples therapy and ways for us to build back up the trust and spark in our relationship. She agreed, and I started looking up therapists and asking for her to do the same. She dragged her feet and never got around to the tasks, despite spending hours scrolling on Instagram daily. Eventually, we found therapy we could afford and started doing sessions, but it was pointless since she put zero thought or effort into any of it and treated it all like a chore. Eventually, I snapped one day during our sessions, frustrated that she wasn't taking it seriously, frustrated that she didn't even help source the therapy for the problem she created, and even decided to post a funny meme that day about being in a threesome and not knowing what to do. Great meme, really funny, just a little too close to home. At this point, she was all out of effort and completely complacent and devoid of all giving. She began doubling down on the partying and began hanging out and talking to Jason more, spending a lot more time portraying herself as a promiscuous woman on social media, and denying a lot of my sexual advances. I stopped planning trips with her or anything for the future because of how weird and uncertain things were. We spent a few months in a weird twilight space where we just went with the flow as roommates, not working on the issues at hand and trying to ignore the dying relationship. It was at this point I started noticing her and Jason getting closer. She had always mentioned that he was a cool dude and they had similar interests: smoking weed, gaming, anime, etc. I understood why they were cool, and she would say things like, "He's short. He has a girlfriend. We're just friends. Nothing more," and I would accept it since I didn't have proof otherwise. I continued to snoop through her phone and didn't find anything incriminating other than them walking to the train together after work and smoking weed on their lunch breaks. I told her, based on recent events, that alone time with him makes me uncomfortable and I prefer if you not hang out with him alone outside of work. She agreed and assured me it would stop. A month later, I asked if she is still hanging out with him, despite a picture being sent from him to her of her walking down the street. I knew the reference behind this picture, and she claimed not to know why he sent it either. She assured me nothing was going on and sent me a screenshot of her text messages with him, which were few and far between over the course of a few months, essentially saying that they barely communicate. One Sunday morning, she had plans for brunch with her friends, and she was dressed stunning, of course. I had already felt like she put more effort into her appearance when going out with friends than with me, but I saw she was happy and excited for the day, and I tried to just internalize it. She noticed I was a little off and asked me, "What's going on with you? You seem upset about something." I told her how I felt, and she proceeded to cry, saying, "I always have to find a way to ruin her fun and put her down. It's like you see me being happy and about to go have fun and try to take it away from me before I go." That was never the case for me, and I explained that to her, but it fell on deaf ears and she left upset. She ignored my texts and calls the rest of the day as I tried to gauge when she was coming back home. My cousin was admitted to the hospital the day before, and I wanted to use the car to see her. She never responded. I end up falling asleep waiting for her to come home around midnight and only wake up when she drunkenly stumbles into bed and passes out with all her clothes on from the night before. She refuses to answer any of my questions and falls asleep. Me, being upset and unable to sleep, I went into the living room to sleep. I noticed something fall out of her jacket pocket and saw it was a deep throat spray she had apparently purchased that night. It was still in the packaging, and she keeps all her receipts. I never brought it up to her as I didn't know how to. In the morning, I asked her what happened that night, and she said she got really drunk and was upset with me and wanted her space. She also told me that she decided to do cocaine that night for the first time. Neither of us had ever tried it because her friend really wanted some, and she tried to bump off a random dealer in the middle of the park to test it before purchasing. I freaked out and told her it was idiotic and irresponsible and she could have died. But she brushed it off and told me, "I'm always mad about something." 2 days later, on Yom Kippur, I went to work to see most people had decided to work from home that day. I wasn't aware that the holiday was that day and thought back to earlier in the morning. My wife was getting ready for school as I was getting ready for work and was prepared to head into class. After realizing that she went to a public college and shouldn't have class that day, I called her to find out where she was. She never answered and instead texted me telling me she found out there was no class when she got there and was headed back home. It was around 12 p.m. I told her to call me ASAP. She took 2 hours to do so, saying she was on the train. I didn't feel comfortable about it and later at home asked her to promise me she was telling the truth. I noticed that night in her phone that her coworker had texted her, "How did it go?" To which she called her and spoke with her for 20 minutes. The following morning, I noticed her drawer was open, and I saw something familiar. The deep throat spray and what I thought was the associated receipt. However, this time the deep throat spray was not in its original packaging and had clearly been used. The receipt next to it was actually for a McDonald's drive-thru order nowhere near our apartment or her school around the time she said she was on the train. I confronted her, and she assured me it wasn't her receipt and that she just tested out the spray. She also tried to convince me that she bought it for me and her to use, despite never telling me this and purchasing it on a night where she claimed to be mad at me. I asked her about what her coworker meant about, "How did it go? How did what go? And what did you guys talk about if there was no school that day?" She dismissed it as her and her coworker just catching up. A month later, I found myself going through the phone records online trying to locate a number I had called in the past for tax help and realized that I was able to see who texts me and who I have texted going back months prior. I couldn't see the content of the texts, but I was able to see who sent what to who and when. Instantly, I decided to look under her phone records since I was the primary account holder. I noticed that she had been texting a certain number back and forth for months. I go to her phone to try to locate the contact, and lo and behold, it's Jason, thousands of messages between them over the course of 3 months, none of which were reflected in the empty screenshot of her messages with him, meaning she must have been deleting everything as she goes. I was furious. Prior to this, she told me she had no one to talk to about her problems and her world was falling apart because she had no support system like I did with my friends, despite how close she had seemed to get to her coworkers. When I confronted her about Jason, she finally admitted that they had become close and he was like one of her closest friends and that they confided in each other about their individual relationships and that it was platonic otherwise. She eventually also admitted that she had seen him the day on Yom Kippur when she went to school and that they still hang out outside of work. I was furious. This was the final straw, and I told her, "If you really like him that much, you should be with him." She yelled back, frustrated, saying that she doesn't even like him like that and nothing she said would get me to believe her. Claimed I was being jealous for no reason and that their friendship doesn't threaten us in any way. I couldn't trust her anymore and didn't believe anything she said, obviously. So I reached out to Jason. I asked Jason if he was sleeping with my wife, to which he claimed no, he wasn't. They just talk and hang out sometimes. He doesn't keep any records of their messages because he has a girlfriend and doesn't want any drama by saving texts with female coworkers. Claimed he doesn't mess with girls at work as a personal rule and apologized to me, telling me that, as a man, "I'm sorry you're going through this." I didn't know what to believe. I thanked him for the honesty and proceeded to tell my wife to leave the apartment for a few days while I pack my stuff. I packed. I cried. I said goodbye to my cats, goodbye to her, and proceeded to go to my father's house after the most traumatic final goodbye I had ever experienced. We were both devastated to see where we currently were after all we had been through and how far we had come. All I wanted was to go back to better days, but I couldn't stop thinking about the lying, the mistrust, the laziness, and the complete void left in me by being in such a toxic, unsatisfying relationship for so long. I became a shell of myself. I'm going to try and wrap it up with the post-breakup events leading up to where I am today, which is sadly where things get ugly. Now on to the next story. Story 8. Husband destroyed our marriage years ago when he had an affair after I gave birth to my child. Is there any hope left? I am at a crossroads with regard to my marriage. There was infidelity on his part several years ago, shortly after the birth of our child. He claims there was nothing physical, just an emotional affair. I was devastated. With the work of a therapist and a focus on activities I enjoy, running, volunteering, reconnecting with friends, I was able to build my self-confidence back up. Although our relationship has never recovered to the way things were before the affair, things have been peaceful in our house. But recently, I've realized that I want more from my marriage. Our child is older and not as dependent on me. I'm stable in my career. We are debt-free. I feel healthier and more in control of my life than I ever have. My libido has come back stronger than ever. I have a zest for life that I haven't had since before the affair. But my husband seems content with the way things are. He doesn't put any effort into spending time with me. There is no intimacy on his part. He does not initiate sex. TBH, he does not seem very interested in me. I have talked to him about my needs and how I'm feeling. He claims he is low testosterone but won't do anything about it. He doesn't want to go to any sort of counseling. He stated that he doesn't feel the urgency to fix anything in our marriage at this point. In our marriage, we should be enjoying our new freedom, no debt, no small children. I want to travel, go on adventures, and have sex. Lots of it. He is just not interested. Is there hope? Should I keep trying to talk to him? We have weekly talks to no avail. He's just getting annoyed at this point. What have others done to successfully turn a situation like this around? Comments where OP has replied. Comment 1. Did husband take responsibility for his cheating? OP. He accepted responsibility for the hurt he caused me but refused marriage counseling. He didn't think it was that big of a deal because there was no physical aspect. I chose to forgive and continue on with the marriage for several different reasons. Kid, finances, fear. Focusing on myself after the affair has allowed me to think about what I want and need in a relationship. This is currently not it, but I don't want to just throw in the towel without trying everything I can. Hence, I'm here on Reddit seeking advice. Comment 2 sounds like he never came back from the affair. Who was it with? Opie. He wouldn't tell me, so I don't know. Comment 3, then all of this is very much unresolved. No accountability, and he hasn't even told you who it was. How do you know it was only emotional? Opie. I had no proof it was physical. We had a life and a young child. He apologized. Do I still have my suspicions? Yep, but at the end of the day I can't make him tell the truth. I can only make my own decisions, and I decided to accept his story. Was it a mistake? Probably, but hindsight and all that. Later that night, Thanks everyone for your input. We had another convo tonight, same old, same old. Can't commit to doing the work because he doesn't know how much work it's going to entail. What about our kid? We're great co-parents, blah, 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 all sprinkled in between. I do love you. I know it's time for me to stop chasing and just walk away. It's so damn scary though. Date 1. I had a final talk with my husband. Here is a synopsis of our conversation. I told him that I refuse to live like this any longer. I want a husband, not a roommate/co-parent. His response is that we owe it to our son to provide him with a 2-parent household. I told him that we owe it to our son to be happy so that he knows what happiness looks like. I don't want to normalize this environment for him. Husband doesn't understand why he can be content to live like this, but I can't. Accused me of being insecure because I can't live without a man. Husband says that we should continue to carry on like this for our son, and maybe the relationship will improve with time. I responded by saying that our marriage has never really been good and I don't want to go back to that. I want to try to work towards something better. He says that he believes that I like being miserable and asks me several times, "Why can't you just be happy?" Husband then admits to me that he never wanted to get married and have kids, but that is what normal people do, so he went along with it. This was an aha moment for me, as I always knew something wasn't right about our marriage. I was never settled and always had to fight for my needs. I asked husband to move out of the house so we can start separation. He refused, saying that it would be too hard on him. I obviously can't leave because I am the main caregiver of our son, and I am not willing to uproot him when we separate. I'd like my son to continue to have this home as his primary residence. After the aha moment came an intense wave of sadness. I am now questioning everything in my life. I started to cry, and he got frustrated and left. We have not said anything to each other since. We briefly discuss household duties and childcare, but that's it. Husband has been helpful around the house with son's school activities/schedule. Very attentive to our son, polite and not nasty, planning family game nights and things we can do together as a family. Most of the things I begged him to do for the last 16 years. This is just confusing and infuriating. Why now when I have one foot out the door? I really don't know what to do at this point. He doesn't want me to leave but won't stop me if I do. He won't leave but has stated verbatim that he refuses to work on our marriage. I am totally confused. I am seeking advice. Please note, just leaving is not an option for me. I'd have to leave my son. That is not an option. Update 2. Husband and I no longer have any sort of relationship. We are co-parents and roommates. Husband refuses to work on the marriage but doesn't want me to leave as he thinks our child will suffer. You can read my previous posts on the current state of my marriage on my Reddit page. Husband and I both have good-paying jobs that allow us to pay all monthly bills, save for retirement and emergencies, and still have a bit left over for fun. We have a household budget tracker that shows that we pay roughly equally into household expenses, even though he makes more than me. I recently got a second part-time job that will allow me to invest in myself. New professional headshots, going on vacations by myself/with friends, therapy, etc. I do not want this income to be included in our household income. Husband thinks my new income should count towards our household income and, as such, I should be paying more proportionally into household expenses. As far as I'm concerned, since I no longer have to put any effort into our failed marriage, I can instead start to focus on working on myself. This includes spending money from my part-time job on things/experiences that will make me happy. My question is, am I an a-hole for not using the money I earned for my part-time job toward our household? Edit to add. My second job will be done from home in the evenings. There is no need for my husband to help me with childcare/additional tasks around the house. Comment where OP has replied. Comment. If he suddenly got a bonus or raise, would he include that money in the household budget? OP. Probably not. I suspect you're right. I know he has received bonuses from his job, but I've never seen a dime. He has purposefully kept our finances separate and kept me in the dark about what he earns/benefits. He, of course, has always had access to all of my financial info. More info on son and responsibilities. There are no childcare costs. Our child is a teenager. I edited my post to state this. My part-time job will not require him to do anything extra. It's all online and can be done in the evenings after our kid is in bed. My husband traveled for work 2 to 3 weeks per month for most of our marriage. He also travels several weeks per year with friends. I never asked for compensation for basically raising our child and maintaining our household by myself, but the thought of compensating him for the situation his choices have put us in makes me feel away. Don't mean to take it out on you. Their relationship now. He stated he's committed to reviewing our options for the marriage after our child is out of the house. For now, he thinks we should both continue to live together and co-parent. We are low conflict, just not affectionate with each other. I can't speak for him, but I have zero desire or energy to even think about finding someone else after 16 years of marriage. I'm questioning everything in my life. OP is voted NTA. I have contacted a divorce lawyer just to see what my options are. He was so helpful. We'd approach it as an uncontested divorce, splitting everything 50-50ths. I'm going to reach out to a few more for pricing. My heart breaks at the thought of not seeing my child every day. We have a very good relationship and I'm the person he talks to about stuff, but I do not want him to think that this is healthy for me. It's not. I'm constantly questioning my worth and what I did wrong. I've also reached out to a few therapists. As far as my income for my part-time job is concerned, I'm going to use it on me. I told him that if he gets a part-time job, he can use the money however he wants. He is not happy, but I can't concern myself with his happiness anymore. Thank you all for your honest feedback. Final update. Hi everyone. It's been a while since I've posted in this community. Over a year. But wanted to give you an update since you all were kind enough to offer advice on my earlier posts. What a difference a year can make. If you've read my previous posts, you'll know that I was in a really shitty situation this time last year. My marriage had ended years ago, and I was in the throes of grieving it. I contemplated suicide, but thank goodness I was able to talk myself out of it. Since then, I've separated from my husband, purchased a house, got a new job, ran a marathon, met a new man, and traveled quite a bit. It's been a wild and busy year. I won't get into all of the details of the adventures I've had, but if you'd like to know more, just message me. Now that I've slowed down, I'm sitting here on the eve of Thanksgiving, reflecting on the year. A few of my thoughts. They say marriage is hard, and divorce is hard, and to choose your heart. Divorce is definitely much harder, and it's something I would not celebrate unless the person is in danger. There are times where I wonder if I did the right thing, not because I miss my ex, but because I was so afraid of being married. It's less scary facing the devil you know than the devil you don't know. Ultimately, I know I did the right thing. One cannot live with constant disrespect from their spouse and expect to be well mentally. But I will always wonder if I could have held out a bit longer, at least until our child was in college and out of the house. There really is no perfect person out there waiting for you to find them. There are a lot of imperfect people who are either doing the work or not. I constantly check in with myself to ensure I'm one of the ones doing the work. Unfortunately, there are more folks not doing the work. I get it. It's hard and painful. It's slow going and takes an incredible amount of strength. Strength to really look at your own issues. Strength to leave relationships that do not work for you regardless of who is at fault, and strength to be alone. We always want the story to be a victim/villain scenario, but the reality is, in most cases, it's not. Don't get me wrong. There are times when someone clearly is a victim, but barring abuse, most of the time we are so blinded by our ego that we fail to see the role we play in the demise of our relationships. My ex is not a bad person. He just wasn't the person for me. In my haste to get married and have kids, I ignored this very glaring fact. And in my haste to get over my separation, I ignored that with a new man I got involved with 4 months after my separation was formalized. Which brings me to the present. The new relationship I was in recently ended in a similar way that my marriage ended. They say that the universe will keep sending you the same lesson until you learn it. More true words have not been spoken. At least I can recognize this now, and when you know better, you can do better. FYI, it's not the universe. It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. I went right back to what I know. And finally, the one thing I've learned to notice in my life are the constants. My health, my incredible family, the amazing girlfriends that have stood by me, and my own kick-ass attitude. I know I will always take care of me, and that is so comforting. Recently, one of my BFFs confided in me that she's thinking about divorcing her husband. She explained the situation to me and then asked me what she should do. I gave her the most honest answer I've ever given anyone in my life. I don't know. I'm not her and I cannot possibly understand the situation she's in, but I did promise her that whatever decision she made would be the right one for her, and that I would support her 110%. For anyone that's contemplating a major life change, please know that you really do know what is best for you. Please trust yourself to make the decisions you need to make, knowing that you will be there to take care of yourself. I wish you all the adventures, self-love, and friendship that your heart can handle. Happy holidays and thanks. Now on to the next story. Story 9. Boyfriend and I had planned an expensive vacation to celebrate our anniversary, but he dumped me for not getting his humor. Me, 19F, with my 22M boyfriend. He just dropped a bomb on me, and I'm struggling to cope. So, long story, but I, 19F, have been with my now ex, I guess, boyfriend, 22M, for about a year and a half now. He's been drinking a lot lately, like every night really, and going out to the bar 3x a week, which is fine. I mean, he gets his college work done, and we don't live together. But this past Sunday, he was coming over and said he was grabbing us some beer on the way, and it hit me that I hadn't hung out with him sober since. Well, I couldn't even remember. So I told him no, thank you, that I wouldn't be drinking at all when he came over. I told him I was concerned about how much he was drinking and that it was a bad habit to make. He agreed, although sullen. I wasn't angry. I mean, he had made me quit smoking cigarettes because it was bad for my health, so it was my turn to make sure he stayed healthy as well. But since that day, he had been extremely distant from me. He would still ask to hang out, but when we were together, it was just like we were in the same space but not really hanging out. He would be on his phone, be short with me, etc. I noticed right away and asked what was wrong, and he said he'd just been feeling blue lately. Okay, no problem. People feel blue from time to time, so I gave him some space. I've been extremely busy this week working 40+ hours, juggling nursing school, and getting all my work done by this Friday because I rented us a cabin in Gatlinburg to celebrate our anniversary. I mean, I have paid upwards of $300 to $400 plus for this trip. So the date comes around, and he asks if we can get dinner and if he can take me to Sephora and let me pick out some things. So obviously he's been distant, but we must be okay if he's putting in this much effort, right? Wrong. I mean, it's only been 4 days of him being down. We get back to my place, and he's back to short replies and playing a video game in my living room. And every time I try to get near him, he's just pulling away. I mean, he doesn't like cuddling in general, but it's our anniversary, so I leave him be. I did say to him, hey, I know you're feeling down, but I've had to initiate every kiss and hug today, and it's kind of an important day, so I would appreciate some effort here. Later that night, his friends called and stopped by real quick, and it was just a 180 in his attitude. He was back to himself, happy and joking, and then when they left, we went outside and he just went right back to being very cold towards me. And I think in that moment, I realized that something was seriously wrong. So I asked him, it must have been the millionth time, what's wrong? And I loved dinner and I appreciated the presents, but what I really wanted was him. And he just sits down and says that we don't click anymore. He tells me he thinks that I just don't get his humor and that he can't marry someone who doesn't get him. I'm stunned. I mean, I was floored. We have had such an amazing relationship up till this point. Hands down, everyone looked up to us. I asked him what he wanted to do, that I could cut down on work and we could set up days actually to get out of the house and go on adventures, and he just said he didn't know anymore. Came silence of me quietly crying. He asks me to please say something and I don't, and then says that he thinks he should go. I told him I thought that was a good idea, and that was that. So hello, Reddit. I got dumped by my initially flawless boyfriend on our anniversary. One day before a huge, expensive trip I had paid for, and 4 days before my birthday. I spent last night bawling. My best friend is driving 5 hours to stay with me in the non-refundable cabin I have booked, and I am just in pieces. I don't even know where it went wrong. I mean, I thought I was a really good girlfriend. We never fought. I've been paying for almost everything for the past 6 months since he doesn't have much money at the time. I have constantly doted upon him with gifts. I've helped him all semester with school and his planner. I mean, I can go on and on. and to end a year-and-a-half relationship over such an excuse. The only thing that's changed during the last year is that I was partying with him and drinking and generally just going out every other night. I didn't have a job. I was a bit reckless. And this year, I really buckled down and got 3 jobs to afford a vacation. Ironically, because he has an internship in Bangkok for 2 months this summer, and I had planned on spending 2 weeks with him. I started nursing school, and I only drink every few weeks now. Maybe he only really felt bonded to me when we were up together. I don't know. I'm grasping at straws. Since then, he texted me hi once, which I opened and didn't read. He then texted me saying, "Do you want to talk?" which I didn't respond to, and he's called me twice, to which I ignored both calls. I need space. I mean, even if he comes back around, how do I forgive him for leaving me in just the absolute most cruel way I can think of? He changed his profile picture of us to suggest him and his friends and stopped sharing his location with me. I later replied once to his request to talk, saying, "I need a few days and some space, but I do have to know. Are you willing to work this out, or are you just done?" He said he wasn't sure yet and added, "I hope you do know I care about you." I'm sorry, Opie. I think a few days will be good for me to try and figure all of this out. I replied, "You left me on our anniversary, days before a huge non-refundable trip that I had bent over backward to make happen, and 4 days before my birthday. I love you. I really do, but I'll come to you when I'm ready to talk." His last message read, "I thought you wanted me to go last night. I didn't want to have that conversation with you last night. I'm so sorry. Opie. I love you too. I'm just stunned still and angry. I need some kind words and advice." Update. So where do I even begin? This past week has definitely been one of my hardest. After he left me, we essentially went no contact until Monday. I kept myself as busy as I could. Cleaned my entire townhome, went out Thursday night to the bars, went to Gatlinburg with my friends instead and had a good time. Came back Saturday and went to a party Sunday. Got coffee with more friends. And then comes Monday when he got back from going to his parents. We had our final talk. I showed up with his things already packed into a box, knocked on the door, and we went up to the roof. I was smoking a cig, and he asked if I was smoking again and told me it was bad for my health and gave me the e-cig we had bought together, saying to use that from now on instead. I didn't cry during our talk. I told him that leaving me that way was callous and cruel, that feeling distant is common in a long-term relationship, and that you stick it out, you don't just leave after feeling that way for 2 weeks. That the way he ended things was borderline unforgivable. He refused to believe that, saying, "I can't help when I feel what I feel," and blamed me for asking him what was wrong on our anniversary, consequently causing him to break down and tell me I don't get his humor. He went on to say that one too many of his jokes went over my head, that humor is a big part of him and that he's always having to explain his references to me, that he still loved me and cared for me and that there was nothing I could have done differently, that I was the best girlfriend he's ever had, we just weren't compatible. I said, after a year and a half, you don't suddenly end a relationship over a few jokes that I didn't get, and in the end, he just wasn't willing to work on us, which he agreed to. I told him this was his only chance to change his mind, and he said he was sticking to his decision. I told him his things were packed in my car and to come get them. He said he would meet me in his apartment, and I refused, telling him that he would be the one carrying his things. He went and got them and handed the Polaroids on top to me. I handed them back, saying to trash them, and he asked if I was sure there wasn't one I wanted to keep. I said no. He went through a couple before tossing them in the garbage. His room was still the same. No pictures of us had been taken down. He walked me out to my car. He lingered and then walked off, later texting, "I'm so sorry. OP, I hope you know this isn't easy or fun for me. I hope you're doing okay." I didn't respond. I unfriended him on everything. I took his contact out of my phone. I changed my Netflix passcode. I changed my FB status to single, and in one drunken fit, I paid for Tinder Gold. He has kept me on everything and watches what I post. Eventually, I'll block him and give him no contact. Yesterday was my birthday. He texted me saying, "Happy birthday," and all I said was, "Thank you." Then I admitted mornings were hard and that I perk up little by little throughout the day, and he agreed. Then I thanked him again, and that was that. Then today, I took my roommate's dog for a walk throughout campus. I was sitting down to cool off from the sun when I saw him also walking down the sidewalk. He walked up to me and chatted for a few minutes, asking how I was, what I was up to, etc., and then went off to the library to study. I have some dates lined up throughout the week. Girls' night tomorrow after class and a few parties to attend Friday. I'm going home to Nashville to be with friends and family. I'm going to be okay. I know I am. I'm surrounding myself with friends. I'm forcing myself to go out on dates. I don't want a relationship, just something new to keep me busy. I'm going to Florida with some of the Greek life during spring break. I'm walking for a couple of hours every day again to lift my spirits. I'm slowly cutting him out. It's my first breakup. He was my first love. I never expected to feel physically heavy in my chest. I didn't expect the feelings to come in waves. One moment I'm on top of the world with endless energy. The next I'm struggling to get out of bed. But I do every day. I go out. I call my friends. I talk to a new guy. And I creep on animal shelter websites, debating to get a puppy. It hurts like hell, but it's not what I expected it to be like. It's a pain I know I'll heal from. Now on to the next story. Story 10. I was an alcoholic who emotionally abused my wife. She gave me divorce papers, but I got sober and turned my life around. We're trying to reconcile, but my guilt is suffocating me. I'm 27M and my wife is 31F. We hit a rough spot and have been separated at home for almost a year now. It was largely my fault. After a big setback in my father's death, I fell into alcoholism and despair. I stopped taking care of myself and neglected her. When not emotionally abusing her, I eventually refused therapy for the nth time. She consulted a divorce lawyer and drafted papers. I signed them off right away, but she didn't, keeping them in her room. She knew I was in a hard spot financially, so she said she'd wait for me to come into my inheritance so I could move out, and then she'd sign and file for a no-fault divorce. Not from the US. In our country, you can do this. After 2 months sleeping in my home office, I got sick of it and stopped drinking. I dived into work and overall did chores around the house and helped her out. When she commented on my change, I boasted I was doing it for myself and not for her, and she agreed. Because while she wanted me out, she still cared for me. Over the last month, she also occasionally asked me to sleep in the bed with her and not in my home office. Nothing intimate happened, but still, she would spoon me. This continued until last evening. We had gotten closer and closer, especially over the holidays, and I told her that what I said was not true. I had changed and stopped drinking to show her at first, but then I really wanted to turn over a new leaf and be a good soon-to-be ex-husband. She went to her room and picked up the divorce papers, setting them in front of me. She asked what we should do with those, so I ripped them and she yelled out a big yes and then hugged me. So I guess we won't be getting divorced. Hooray. Update 1. Hello everyone. I posted a week ago about what had happened the evening prior. After living separately at home for almost a year, my soon-to-be ex-wife wanted to reconcile. So I ripped the divorce papers in front of her, to her delight. However, soon after, the realization that I had planned my whole new year around the fact I was getting a divorce set in, and that the decision of reconciliation actually brought me uncertainty and anxiety. My wife noticed that, and we had a number of heart-to-hearts about this. There was talking, laughs, and even tears during those talks. Tears of the good, liberatory kind. My wife rarely, if almost never, cries. She's the stoic type. But seeing her break into tears, sobbing how much I hurt her and she still loves me, was like getting stabbed in the heart. I realized the pain I caused her is still fresh and burning. She unloaded all the pain and turmoil I had inflicted upon her with my past behavior and admitted she felt both proud and bitter about my changes in the last year. Proud because I turned my life around. Bitter because I had accepted the divorce so quickly, as if she was what was holding me back and she wasn't worth my best self. However, she was also angry at herself because she was already reconsidering the divorce back in June, but didn't say anything or give me signals because she feared I'd revert to my old behavior or would rebuff her. In the meantime, I had started to renovate my father's old villa. Well, more of a big house than a proper mansion. To move in this year and gave her only breadcrumbs of information about it. And she was both positively surprised to learn about all the work I am putting into it and again a bit bitter that I didn't tell her anything, and all my projects were designed without her in mind, as if she was just an already fading memory. The possibility of an amicable divorce has been brought up again, but she wanted two clear answers. 1. Was there another woman? 2. Did I actually stop loving her? The answer to both questions is no. I told her I did suffer about losing her in our marriage, but I didn't want to be the ex-husband who made fleeting promises, pounded her down, and made a nuisance of himself. It's the least I could have done after making her suffer so much, and also thank her for her infinite kindness. I just worked, did my best to be a good soon-to-be ex-husband, paid my utilities, and wanted to pay her rent for the room she allocated me in her home, which she always refused even when I insisted. Eventually arrived the $1 million question. Do we want this marriage to work? Answer: yes. It won't be easy, and there's still a lot of work to be done. We agreed to take baby steps, and I've already booked couple therapy for this week. I am already doing individual therapy, but now she'll be looking for individual therapy for herself as well. In the last week, we went on some quiet dates, walks, and a short hiking trip. I also made a peace offering of sorts by asking her if she wanted to participate in my renovation project of my father's house, give her input and ideas. She was enthusiastic about it. She likes gardening, but her property has no garden, and she makes do with the potted plants on the balcony, while my father's house has a large garden and a big plot of overgrown land behind it. She said we will be busting our backs, but it will be worth it. And I think that working together on a shared project will help reestablishing our bond. So that's where we stand now. The road is still long and difficult, but I'm hopeful. I wish to sincerely thank all the Redditors who gave me their insights, comments, praises, and criticism. Update 2. Little changed in the last week. We had our first couple counseling session and her first therapy session. We laid down the framework for our marriage, went out on some dates, and overall spent quality time together. We still haven't been intimate. She tried to initiate once, but I gently turned it into cuddling and talking. Another issue is that I have some difficulties sleeping in the same bed as her, not because I have something against her, but I'm so used to sleeping in my own bed that often I sleep 1 or 2 hours with her, wake up, and head to my home office/bedroom and sleep there. I wake up earlier and fix breakfast for her. She's happy about it but mentioned once I didn't sleep with her. Do these things take time? I believe so, but I'm a bit scared I'm giving the impression I've given up on our marriage. I believe it will take months and lots of work to get back to how we were, while she thinks the process should be quicker, and I'm being too hard on myself. Update 3. I've been sober for over a year and got sober after she served me divorce papers. She decided to try to reconcile last January, and although things have been not easy to say the least, we still sleep separately. I don't feel secure enough to have sex with her, and we do lots of individual and couple therapy. We somehow are managing. However, despite what she says, I can't get over the shame that I've been a useless and abusive drunkard, and she probably remembers me as such. And the shame and guilt become unbearable. I work as a civil servant in family services, ironically enough, and recently I got moved to the cabinet in the provincial government. I even had a photo shaking hands with our Prime Minister. My wife picked this photo and put it on Facebook for everyone to see, writing how proud she was. I do think she genuinely believes this, and I'm happy, but I also think she's too eager to rug sweep the past, and our problems aren't fixed at all. I still feel lots of shame and guilt towards her every time I look at her, and at a certain point even looked forward to the divorce. But she insists I am doing all the right things, and if I love her, divorce would be something I'll end up regretting. I just feel we will never overcome this, and although many moments are happy and I do my best to give her quality time, cook her favorite dishes, and get her gifts, I can't help but feel hopeless and even alone in my feelings. She wants for us to move on, but while for her it might be easy to forgive me, for me it's not easy to let go of the shame of what I was to her. My therapist says I have to deal with it on my own as I caused all this, and I agree, but I don't know how to move forward. Is there something I can do? Or should I learn to accept this and live with it? Maybe with time it will get better. After all, a year sober is almost nothing. Update 4. She had every right to file for divorce because of my alcoholism. She didn't deserve that. In the meantime, I was sick of it, so I stopped drinking, focused on my career, and on renovating my father's house. She wanted to reconcile upon seeing those changes, and I agreed. But now I'm realizing I had internalized the divorce in my life plans. I planned my new life around it. I can't see myself being intimate with her. She tried a couple of times, and I gently turned her down as a gesture of goodwill. I asked her if she wanted to participate in my father's home renovation project, and she accepted with enthusiasm. She always wanted a garden. Now I'm regretting it because that was supposed to be my retreat from the world, and I will have to share it with her. I said all of this to her. She was upset but also understanding. In her opinion, part of the fault is hers. She never communicated about reconciliation and sprung it up on me, and as a result, what should have been a happy thing became a source of stress and anxiety for me. My therapist and hers are saying this is my depression talking, but I'm not so sure. Are we truly done, son? Update 5. Not really an update, just a new development. I showed her the last thread. She's reading it on her phone. She said she already knew many of the things I wrote, including the comments about jam and flowers. She said if she knew the anguish of reconciliation so soon would cause, she wouldn't have offered it and is regretting it. She thanks everyone for the kind words and appreciations made towards her. At the same time, she got upset because, in her opinion, I put things worse than they are. So either I exaggerated them or I've been keeping my true feelings from her, and this is a big problem. For example, she says I'm not as cold as I'm making myself up to be, and that she's not as pushy as I make her to be, and in fact, she's been giving me lots of space. She says I'm doing a weird self-sabotage here. She says I'm trying to get her to leave me, but it won't happen, and if I really want to end it, I have to do it myself. She doesn't agree with it, but if I want to move out, she won't oppose it. She wasn't angry, just very numb. Update 6. Things are not easy, but overall they are going well, both in therapy and everyday life. There's still some issues in getting intimate, but we are getting there. Sometimes, though, the shame becomes too much, and I wonder why she's even staying with me. Maybe sunk costs? I do my best. Little gifts, dates, cooking her favorite dishes, picking up chores. But to me, it always feels like I could do more. Sometimes she notices this and says to take it easy. She says I try too hard sometimes, and it comes off as artificial. She likes that now I'm all smiles, always shaved, well-dressed, and gentlemanly with her, but jokes that sometimes I look like the president of her country of origin. I'm doing my best, though, even at the cost of overdoing it. Update 7. 2 months later, things are going largely well. Talks of reinitiating divorce proceedings have stopped, and although we still sleep separately and have no intimacy, my issues are working on it with my therapist. We are doing well. Sometimes I feel I can't get over the shame that I have been a useless and abusive drunkard, and she probably remembers me as such, and the shame and guilt become unbearable, but then it passes a bit. Basically, we are starting over, dating, doing bonding activities. I get her gifts and surprises. She admitted she thought things would go faster, but in the end agrees with me that after a year separated, things can't just get back as before. She also says I am too hard on myself, but I think she's the one being too indulgent. But apart from those difficulties, we are doing fine. I think this will be my last post for a while. Things are going well, reasonably so. Still having issues in the bedroom, but I am working on them to try and be a good husband, at least on that aspect. Last week, I received a work assignment in the capital of our country. It's a 2-month-long assignment, and I'll be provided state housing. She is excited about this and already wants to pack her bags. I have my doubts about her coming along, for her own sake. She has friends and family here. Me, not so much. I cut them all off and not interested in reconnecting. Her support system as a whole. She has reasons and loved ones to stay here, unlike me. She won't budge. Since we are married, it's her full right to come along. And since she has her own e-commerce business, she can manage it remotely. Plus, she wants us to get back home every weekend. I know better than dying on this hill, so I'll be leaving with her. That's it. Naturally, I am always cautiously and within reason hopeful about our future together. Update 8. Just dropping by to say this will be really my last post. I couldn't take it anymore, and I did not understand why I kept having negative thoughts about my wife and me, despite things going well. And some of you got into my ear. There could be something wrong in my head. So we got in touch with a professional, got tests done, and found out my blood values were very screwed up. This led the doctors to speculate a chemical imbalance in my brain and prescribe me antidepressants. Not exactly antidepressants, they are mood regulators. They told me both my wife and I were hesitant about this, but I gave it a try, and lo and behold, my negative thoughts disappeared overnight. I finally feel in control of my emotions. I feel that I love my wife, and I feel that things can and will get better. I was putting on a front before, but now I really enjoy spending time with her and make her smile. We started making love again, and no blue pill was needed. And we get back from the capital every weekend. We are turning my father's old villa into our private retreat and love nest. I did apologize for my unreliable behavior in the past months after she had extended me an olive branch. She said she doesn't blame me because of what we know now, but I still think it's not a valid excuse. I should have sought medical help sooner. Now I can say and mean it that I'm happy and grateful. My wife practically gave me a third chance, and I don't want to waste it. I want to make her smile every day and enjoy everything to the fullest. I guess this is it, and you won't be hearing from me ever again. I just want to thank you guys for your inputs, opinions, advice, and criticism. Some comments where Opier replied. Comment 1. Congrats OP. Many have been following your story, and happy you gave us a positive story to read. Continue to take care of you and your wife. Opie, thank you, my friend. I will. Feels like I've been on a very long hangover, and it cleared up just now. Comment 2. Oh hey, I remember your other posts. Way to go, man. Keep up the awesome work and cheers to a better future for everyone involved. You deserve to smile. Comment 3. I followed your story, and I was one of those thinking there was something wrong in your head, no offense. I mean the chemical imbalance. I'm glad to see medication has improved you and your wife's quality of life. I think she's especially happy because after all this time she finally got back the love of her life. Opie, thank you. I admit I am a bit afraid I could end up hooked on medication for the rest of my life, but doctors reassured me it won't be the case. And anyhow, the priority is our wellness now. Now on to the next story. Story 11. I caught my wife in bed with another man while I was traveling for my job as an archaeologist. My wife and I met in Savannah, where we both attended college in very different fields. She was going for script writing and I studied archaeology. The first date went well enough that we continued seeing each other. And the more we did, the more we realized just how perfect we were for each other. She was a little geeky, very feminine, and very good at communicating. When we first dated, we went out together weekly for trivia night at our favorite place and saw each other any chance we got during the week. Before her third year in school started, she moved in with her mom to save money because living on campus wasn't the best financial decision. From the first time I met her mom over dinner, she loved me, so did her sister and nieces. They all accepted me as if I was always part of the family. I had a job lined up as an archaeologist as soon as I graduated. My wife had a little trouble finding a job with her degree, so she started writing scripts to submit to several streaming services and channel networks. None of those panned out. Meanwhile, I proposed and we moved into the house I bought regardless of her income. I knew I wanted to marry her as my wife. She continued writing for about a year, but after that, she caved in and got a job as a receptionist at a nonprofit organization. I told her she didn't have to work a job she didn't like, but she promised she wanted to do it because sitting at home wasn't cutting it for her. That job lasted a total of 15 months before she quit and started her own home business. She started offering tarot card readings and selling little trinkets she made out of epoxy. Every Saturday she went to the market with a cart full of her art projects to set up at a table she decorated to look pretty inviting and mysterious. I was surprised at how much money she managed to pull in from doing this. As an archaeologist, I had to travel for work. I would be home for about 2 weeks at a time, then leave for up to 6 weeks at a time. That was the longest it ever was, which I didn't think was that bad. Sure, I missed the intimacy with my wife, but that's what makes marriage so sacred. You wait and remain loyal to your spouse no matter what life throws at you. And when you reunite, it's the most rewarding relationship experience. I returned from a 6-week trip at one point, and after we had wonderful reunion sex, it seemed like something was bothering my wife. It was like she wanted to say something to me but wasn't sure how I'd take it. As we sat watching a movie, she clung to her phone, and I could feel her heartbeat racing. I finally paused it and confronted her, saying it was obvious something was on her mind. She swallowed hard and started to cry. She admitted she'd met someone at the market that she really enjoyed talking to. She said she wanted to consider being a life coach to said person, but she wasn't sure how I'd feel about her talking to him every day. I asked her if I could read what they'd said to each other so far, so she gave me her phone. After she scrolled up on the messages, there wasn't much that screamed infidelity to me. She just asked him how he was handling the move and reminded him that while having to relocate your family is a huge pain and life obstacle, it isn't the end of the world, and he didn't have to feel trapped. We all have the free will to do whatever we feel like, up to and including buying a plane ticket out of the country and never looking back. I told her it was fine for her to coach people and have friends. I just wanted to know the first names of the people she talked to and made it clear that I trusted her not to start an affair or behave inappropriately with anyone. She was accepting of my terms, but I did notice a little disappointment in her. Not enough that I could say anything. She would have denied it. Half a year passed without an incident or any trouble in our relationship. While I was away working in Tennessee, my wife called me one evening as I lay in my hotel bed. She was crying, saying she needed to ask me a question that had been on her mind for some time. I told her to ask away and that I wouldn't be mad at her just for asking a question. She asked me if I wanted to sleep with other women whenever I went on a work trip. I told her no, absolutely not. I never felt the need to sleep with a woman I didn't love or commit my life to. I would wait as long as it took to sleep with her because she was my everything. She was surprised but seemed comforted. She told me if I ever did want to, I could tell her and she wouldn't be mad. I told her she didn't need to worry about it because it never crossed my mind. I reminded her that when I chose to get married, I made her my one and only for the rest of my life, as much as I would be an archaeologist for the rest of my life. I told her I never wanted anything to come between us and that sleeping with other people was just a recipe for disaster that could lead to jealousy, problems, and divorce. She agreed with me and seemed to feel much better. She told me she loved me with all her heart and wanted to be my good, loyal wife for life. With that, we said good night. The next morning is when my gut started twisting and knotting. I didn't know what was going on at first. I honestly considered food poisoning as a possibility, but after giving it a moment's thought, I realized I wasn't sure I could trust my wife. She never asked me if she could sleep with someone else, but she kind of went around the question by asking me if I wanted to. I decided to go home early, even though my request was denied. I was risking my whole job to drive back home before I was scheduled to leave. After hours of worried driving, I arrived home to find my wife's car in the driveway and no suspicious activity. I was relieved, but that was short-lived as soon as I unlocked the front door. I heard sounds coming from our bedroom. I raced to it to find my wife having sex with another man. When she saw me standing in the doorway, she screamed. I yelled for him to get out of my house, which he did after scooping up his clothes. I just stared at my wife in disbelief for a few seconds before reminding her that I had just told her how much I didn't want either of us to sleep with other people and how bad it would be for our relationship. She just whined and asked me what she was supposed to do when most of her life was spent waiting for me to love her instead of actively loving her. I told her she should do what any normal person has to do when they don't have access to a lover. Not meet some stranger and decide to take him to her marital home to have sex while her husband was out working. I told her this went against everything marriage stood for and that whatever fantasy she had about an open relationship wasn't going to happen with me. I demanded a wife in all senses of the word. She was on her knees, crying her eyes out, begging me with cupped hands to forgive her. She blamed herself for talking to other women about her situation and listening to them when they told her to do whatever she felt was right. I was beside myself. I couldn't believe that even though I was totally clear about how I felt about an open relationship, she still went and talked to other women who encouraged her to give in to temptation and betray her vows. She cheated on me. She kept me in the dark, and I still caught her sleeping with him. I told her to get out. She told me she didn't know where to go. I told her I didn't care. I knew she had family and friends that wouldn't let her spend a night outside, so I told her to go to one of their houses. She wouldn't move. All she did was sit in the hallway, making all kinds of remorseful noises. Whenever she thought of something specific, she'd start sobbing all over again. I ignored her as best I could, locking myself in the spare room. As annoying as it is, I was forced to stand my ground and share the house with her until she was ordered to vacate by the court when our divorce was final. While we lived separately under the same roof, I posted daily to social media about what she'd done, tagging all her profiles and business accounts to it. I commented on the pictures of her tarot table set up, making smart remarks that questioned her ability to even see her own future downfall. This definitely impacted her reputation. A lot of would-be customers took one look at her social media accounts and found at least one of my comments. It was enough that she lost all motivation to do it. She didn't even try getting a job in her degree field again. My testimony, along with the phone records I requested, were enough to avoid alimony payments. So without any life prospects or motivation, my divorced ex moved back in with her mother, sister, and nieces. She's basically back to where she was in high school, except much older and sadder. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.